Welcome once again to another episode of The Upgrade. My name is Gary Muttley. He is...
Len Carmichael, Landmine Studios. How you doing, Gary?
Oh, I'm just wonderful. I had a pretty exciting weekend hitting up some wonderful independent wrestling shows for the first time in a very long time. So,
how were the crowds?
The day show had a decent crowd. The night show had a pretty sizable crowd.
And which ones did you go see?
The day show was Jersey Championship Wrestling, which is actually run by the guys that run Game Changer Wrestling, which I've talked about on here before, and we talked about with like Nick Gage and stuff. So it's some of the guys that work for that company as well. They kind of talked about it as being sort of a developmental territory, which means they put on some of their younger guys and some of the people that don't get onto the bigger shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to get them some exposure. So that was really cool. And then the night show was another company called VXS Wrestling. And that was a very loaded show with a bunch of people that are on TV and stuff. Brian Cage, who is on AEW, Davey Richards, who used to be in Ring of Honor and Impact and a couple other companies, and has made the rounds over the years and recently came back after being away for a couple of years. And a bunch of other guys that are kind of regulars on the indie circuit, and a couple of guys that you don't see very often that only do certain shows. So it was a nice mix between the two shows. It was a nice mix of independent guys that you see a lot in the Northeast, and then also people from elsewhere. Like Brian Cage flies in from California because that's where he lives, and some of the other guys are from different places like Texas and elsewhere. So, but as we talked about on here, one of the things, once things go back to normal, one of the things I always said I wanted to do was try to go to more independent wrestling shows. So that was a good kickoff. 2 shows, same venue, same day. So I was there from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 11, 12 o'clock at night.
So let me ask you this. How does this work with the ring? Like, did they have to tear down and set up the ring, or did they share the ring?
They shared the ring. The first show ended at like 5:30 or so, and they cleared the building out. We walked a couple blocks away, got some pizza, and sat in the car for a little bit with it because it was raining, and they didn't really have any seating in the pizza place. We actually went before the first show and went around the corner. There's a cheesesteak place.
I don't know, bruh. You were in North Jersey, though, so...
I will say the place was actually really good.
Okay.
Because I know sometimes cheesesteaks are hit and miss. This place was on point. Did
you actually get the beef, or did you get the chicken again?
Nah, I went with the chicken. Sometimes, with the beef, you never know. I mean, the place seemed good, but my stomach sometimes can get a little weird with the beef, and if I'm going to be sitting in a place for, 8 hours plus...
You don't want to chance it.
Well, I had never been to the place either, so you don't know what the shitter looks like either. So it's like the last thing you want is to be in a place with a terrible bathroom, having eaten some beef that's not agreeing with you.
Knowing how it's been just being out on the road in the past. I know you know what I mean.
Oh, exactly. We've had the discussion on here before about you don't want to play games, but it's like going to a music venue. It's like, do you really want to take a dump in most music venues?
Nope.
No. So why play yourself with beef that could be bad? Like the chicken generally is safe, especially like cheesesteak chicken. It's thin. They're cooking it. So you don't have to worry about, if it's undercooked or whatever. I mean, that's the same thing with the beef, but sometimes, beef doesn't agree with your stomach once in a while. Doesn't happen to me very often, but it has happened. So I went with the safe bet, and the place was good. I was very happy.
I'm going to tell you that I have never had a problem with beef not agreeing with my stomach. It's always been anything pork related. Like, pork doesn't always agree with my stomach. So it's very rare that you will catch me eating anything pork outside of bacon or pepperoni. Like, the two of them, but they're both cured meats. So they come a little bit further away from just the natural habitat of pork. Like, the last time I actually ate shredded pork, 2 days I was just pissing out of my butt. And nobody, I mean, sometimes I'll eat something knowing it's going to fuck me up, but usually I'll do it when my stomach is funky already anyway, and I want to clear the whole system and just get a nice reset. Like, if you ever catch me eating like a bunch of ice cream or a bunch of cheap like syrup for like pancakes, just know that I already know what I'm getting myself into. Like, know that I've made the calculation and I've determined that, you know what, I need to clear the system anyway. Let's blow it out.
Yeah, as long as you're not doing it before you're like getting on a plane or something.
Oh no. You know, there have been days during quarantine where I was like, I ain't going anywhere for the next 3 days. Yeah. Let's clear this system out of here. Let's get a fresh start.
I can gamble, and even if I lose, it's not much of a loss.
I'm still home.
Yeah, I'm still home, so it's fine. If I'm gambling and losing at this big festival where there's only a porta potty, that's very poor decision making.
So one day, I went to see Hatebreed at the Electric Factory in Philly.
Yes.
And I think they were playing with Sepultura, and I don't remember who else was on the bill at this point. But Hatebreed's about to come on, and my stomach hits the bubbles. Ooh. Hits the bubbles, and I'm talking full on, like, you feel it from your fucking neck to your ass. Just everything feels like it's just falling. And it just feels like a full-on waterfall in your body, you know? And I had to run in the bathroom, and you know the big regular bathrooms at fucking Electric Factory are just horrid. No. So I didn't even sit on the seat, dude. I lifted the seat up and just fired it. I just fired it.
You did the hover?
Yeah, dude. And oh man, it was rough.
You did the hover and drop.
Oh god, it was rough. And I was much better after that, but I didn't want to put my ass on that seat, and I didn't know anybody at the Electric Factory at the time, so I couldn't get to like the back.
Couldn't get to
like the band bathrooms.
Yeah,
because like even the band bathrooms are a little raw, but the public bathrooms are like
it's light years, but that's the way it is for like any music venue. And honestly, I mean, I know you're not nearly into wrestling like I am. Wrestling venues, for the most part, are the same thing.
Right, you're just walking into hell. Like, you already know.
I went to a wrestling show a couple of years ago. It was actually the last independent wrestling show that I went to. And it was in a gym in the Bronx, and that bathroom was horrid. And they only had one bathroom.
One like total bathroom?
Stalls. Yeah, for men and women.
Oh, Jesus.
So you had a line of people waiting, and they only had like 2 stalls, and only one was good for sitting. Mm-hmm. So it was a rough time. If you had the feels like what you're talking about,
you would just shit in your pants.
No, you got a better chance jumping in an Uber and going home.
Shit in the Uber.
That's you might as well just go and
shit on the curb.
Find a sewer grate and just squat, because it just is no good.
Yeah, it's bad.
Find one of those cleaning buckets like that video I sent.
Yeah, that shit was funny.
Oh man.
Hey, but you know what? Sometimes you just it's got to get out. You got to get the demon out of your body.
That's what I was just gonna say. That sometimes if you eat the wrong thing, you got to get that poison out of your system.
Yeah, it's got to come out.
Oh man, it's just fighting to get out. You can feel it just fighting, and you just gotta let it go.
And
hopefully you can find somewhere to let it go as opposed to your pants.
Oh, God.
Oh.
I'm 44 this year, going to be 45. It's been many years since I shit my pants. many years.
And you don't even drink.
And I'd like to keep it that way.
And you don't even drink.
I don't, but I mean...
Not that that's an excuse anyway.
One of the times I was on tour, and we were in California, but we had driven all the way across the country, and as I think I told you, I was eating bomb burritos the whole way. Oh,
God. Oh, why?
Because I had no money, and they were $1. $1 bomb burritos. Oh. So I could bag a bomb burrito and a soda and
why they're $1.
And I could be out of the store for like $4. And, you're eating the burrito, and then you're driving, and you're bubbing, and then you get to, like, the place you're staying, and you're like, oh, I'm good. And, you're hanging out with CDC, and John Bose is literally sitting in front of you on a couch, and you're sitting on, like, a bar stool right behind him, and you're like, oh, man, I got this big fart. I'm going to rip this big fart. And as soon as you ripped it, that it was not a fart. At all. There was nothing fart about it. Because it felt like a fart. And that honestly is the last time that has ever happened to me. That was 2005.
It felt like a fart until it didn't.
It didn't. And there was no turning back because it came out like a bullet.
It's already too late.
It was just gone.
Oh God.
But I'll tell you, and sorry to the friends in CDC, but I threw my dirty underwear right into the washing machine with all their clothes.
Listen, it'll all get clean.
I just took them off and threw them right in.
See, usually you just take them and throw them.
Well, no, I would have normally just thrown them away, but I thought it would be funny to throw my shitty underwear into CDC's clothes.
Oh, man.
I don't think any of them have ever known that story, so now they're going to know. And
surprise!
The next time I see John, if he catches this show, he's going to be mad as fuck.
If he doesn't catch it, somebody's going to tell him.
Somebody's definitely going to tell him.
Somebody's going to rat you out. You fucking snitch bastard, you. Whoever you are. We'll find out who you are, goddammit. But yeah, so back to... Now that we went on that tangent about shitting, independent wrestling, I love it. I have always been a fan. And if you go to big shows like at Madison Square Garden or whatever, like arena shows, go to an independent wrestling show because it's 100,000 times better than being up in fucking section 300. Like, dude, I was sitting second row, and it's like everything.
Same seats for both events?
Yes. That wasn't planned. It just worked out that way because they cleared it out, and then we came back, and the exact same seats were open. We're like, yeah, let's go right back.
Fuck it. These are ours all day.
But yeah, if you're a wrestling fan, do yourself a favor and go to an independent wrestling show. Besides the fact that you're supporting guys that are really out there doing hard work, and hopefully, a lot of these guys start out this way, and then years later you'll see them on TV, which is a cool thing in itself, because that's the way it is for me. A lot of the guys that are on WWE TV now, I've seen them in some pretty fucking small places, which is really cool. And then
that goes for the same for seeing a lot of these dudes in big bands these days.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of parallels between independent wrestling and small bands.
Because, like Doc, we've seen Doc play from basements and garages all the way up to now he's playing with Bad Wolves on huge stadiums.
Yeah,
it's the same situation.
Exactly. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, these dudes put in the hard work, they're traveling, making no money, and like playing in these tiny places, and eventually, if they're lucky, they get to go play bigger places and do, when it comes to the wrestling, have matches in much bigger places, and it's really cool to see that and be a part of it. And it's just a whole different vibe. Like sitting second row, all the action's right in front of you. It's just so much more enjoyable to me than I paid $30 to sit second row. Meanwhile, people are paying $100 to sit like in section 204.
Yeah, fuck that.
Like it's so much more fun. Like, and like I've said on here about music, I'm not saying fuck the big wrestling shows, because I'm going to see AEW at the Prudential Center in September, and I'm going to go. Tickets go on sale in a couple of weeks. They're actually doing the tennis stadium in Flushing, Queens.
Yeah, then you gotta go.
The first time they're doing a wrestling show there. I think they've done a very limited number of events there that are not tennis related, so that's kind of cool in itself. And so I still like the other stuff. It's cool, but nothing beats, just like music. I've talked about arena shows. They're cool, but nothing beats like being up close and having that shit right in your face, whether it's wrestling or music. It's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different exchange of energy, and it's just a lot more fun.
Right.
We were laughing about it because, like, you're up close, you can hear the wrestlers saying silly shit, and they know you can hear them, so they're just saying silly shit just to get you laughing, So you have moments like that, and that's what I mean about it being like a different type of energy, a different type of exchange. It's so enjoyable to me. So I did that all day Saturday. I had a great weekend.
Well, you mentioned earlier while we were talking, because users, don't get it twisted. Not users, but listeners, don't get it twisted. Me and Gary don't just talk on here once a week. We legitimately talk all day, almost every day.
Oh, yeah.
So this conversation is just an extra extension of what's already been going on.
Of the usual conversations that we have over the course of the day. We just can't put memes in audio form, so it's
we can. It's a little tough.
Yeah.
But you mentioned going to that show outside of Philly. I'm definitely interested as long as the things around it line up.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Great.
As long as I can make it work, I'll be there.
And I'll throw it in as a free plug, just because I enjoy the show, and yes, I met some of the guys that run it, but they're not paying me or anything like that. I just enjoy this stuff. VXS is doing a show down near Philly. I think it's Westview, New Jersey. August 7th.
What town?
Is a Saturday. I think it's Westview.
Westview, New Jersey.
Or maybe I'm mixing it up. I have to look. I'm going to look it up just to be sure.
Yeah, look it up and let me know, because I just want to look up what town it's in.
Give me a second, because I'm going to look at the tickets that I bought, and I can go from there to go to VXS Wrestling. Yes, Westville, not Westview. Westview is from goddamn fucking WandaVision.
Okay.
Westville, New Jersey.
So is that one word or two words?
One word. I think it's a bit south of where you are.
Well, I've never heard of it. So it's 1:30:47. Literally drove through this area like 2 weeks ago, because I drove down there to buy a microphone, and then I took the highway over to go over to Red Planet Studios. Literally drove within maybe a mile of this place.
Oh, perfect.
So I know where I'm going. It's all good.
So yeah, VXS, the event's called Party All the Time, because every wrestling show has to have some sort of title, so you know what you're getting into. Oh shit, Two Cold Scorpios on the show.
Oh, I'm in. I'm in.
Yes.
All right, I'm in.
Brian Cage and Two Cold Scorpio are on the show. So
yeah, Westville is a very, 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 very tiny town.
Yeah.
Right at the right off of 295 down in South Jersey. So
And
it's not far
again, just to get that plug in, it's August 7th, VXS Party All the Time in Westville, New Jersey. You could look at VXS Wrestling on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and the tickets are on Eventbrite. So go check that out. They put on some good shows. The dudes that run it are cool dudes, and it's independent wrestling. So if you like independent wrestling or you think you might, give it a shot. And it's right around that Philly area, just outside of Philly, over the water.
It's not too far from that Attilis gym where that asshole white power dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's maybe.
So there might be some bonehead beatings going on.
It's
at
like
the show. One dude
5 miles from there.
One dude did get thrown out of the show. I don't know exactly what happened, but one dude got very forcibly thrown out of the show after acting like an asshole for a good portion of the night. So a couple of the dudes that worked there just grab him up and drag him out the door because he was. I knew he was pissing people off because I saw, like, I heard some whispers and some rumbling of like some guy being a real asshole. And then at some point I saw a couple of dudes, including one dude who was a wrestler, because with independent wrestling, a lot of time the guys will wrestle and then they're there sitting at the table selling their shit.
Right.
So there's one dude who goes by the name Hoodfoot, and I saw him yoke up this dude, and I'm like, uh-oh.
It's time for you to go.
This dude really fucked up. I don't know exactly what he did, but whatever he did, it was bad because he finally went out the door.
So there is actually a really good diner in that town. It's called
really?
Gateway Diner. I've eaten at it twice in the past because I always would end up in South Jersey for random stuff. I had a band that was down in South Jersey at one point. I was in My Turn to Win, and we practiced in South Jersey. We'd play shows down there, and then after a show, you're always looking for a place. And there are two diners within like a quarter mile of each other. There's the Gateway, and then there's the Empire Diner. And I've eaten at both, and they're both pretty good.
Okay.
So if you want to hit some diner action,
well, we'll talk about it because we're probably going to make a weekend out of this, so we'll see. We'll discuss it because some other people may be joining us as well.
Right.
So we'll plan it all out and then maybe work a visit to Landmine Studios as part of this plan. We'll see.
More than welcome to stop by.
So now to switch directions. We are going to talk a little bit about something that we usually don't talk about too much, which is kind of ourselves. We talked about this at one point when we were setting up what eventually became the Upgrade, and we did a little episode where we talked about some of our musical background and stuff, but we never used it. So we decided, why don't we get into it again? And because every now and again, some of our guests will ask us, or other people will ask us, like when we've done the quarantine questions episodes, which now, if we do more of these, we're going to have to come up with a new name, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
'Cause now we're out of quarantine, so
post-quarantine episodes,
post-quarantine questions. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll have to see. We'll come up with something creative, but yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about our backgrounds, mainly music, and give you guys a little bit of information about that you may not know, that people have asked us about. And then, as usual, we'll go on and on with stories and shit, because that's what we do.
Not me, man. I'm keeping it short today.
Yeah, but doesn't it always start that way?
Yeah, always.
Does it ever end that way? So where do we start?
Well, okay. Tell me. Ask me.
Now I know we've talked about some of your upbringing and how music was heavily into that early on. So why don't we go with that first, and then that'll take us on the path from there.
All right. Well, here's the deal. My mom played piano growing up. She played it pretty well, from what I understand. I've never actually heard her play because by the time I knew this about her, she had already been done playing for over 20 years. So she just, I assume, is rusty, and she has just no interest in doing it. But she was pretty accomplished at playing it. But what was more important in our family is that my uncle played trombone very, very well. He started playing trombone at, I guess, 10 or 11, and by the time he was 16, he quit high school to go on tour with Patti LaBelle. And he literally never looked back. Wow. He never went back and finished high school. He never went to college. All he did was play music. And the man was so good at playing music and improvisation that he actually didn't even learn to read music until the late 80s. Because he had to, because he wanted to really get session work instead of just playing with the bands that he was involved in. So some of the bands that he can be found on recordings for would be most notably Kool and the Gang, but also Sun Ra, Charlie Parker. I'm pretty sure he played with Miles Davis at some point, or like late in his career. He's basically run the gamut of playing with jazz musicians and on a few pop rock releases. And you know, he stayed with Kool and the Gang from 78 all the way through till his passing in 2015 due to liver cancer. The important part, or the part of my journey that sticks into that, is that the first thing I remember about live music was going to see Kool and the Gang. It was an event for my family. It was a big deal because we were, getting backstage passes and access to things that most people would never have access to.
Yeah.
And I remember that one of the first concerts I went to, I actually met Aretha Franklin. And she told me that I was one of the most adorable children she'd ever seen. Because it was Aretha Franklin, Kool and the Gang, and P-Funk and Trouble Funk opened the show. It was in D.C. And it was, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was like 4 years old. It was like 1980, 1981. And we're down at, it would have been where the Capitals or the basketball team at that time in Washington, D.C. area was playing. It was in whatever that stadium was. And I remember being backstage and then going to some huge old palatial hotel, and like we were all crashed out in the hotel. It was great, and it was a great time, but I'm young. I don't remember it the way that I would love to remember it as being an adult. But that got me started. I spent many years going just with my mother or my uncle or both, or the rest of the family, to all of their performances that were within a few hours drive, because we could always get in and we could always get a great seat and have a great time. So I'm talking Valley Forge Music Fair, down in Philadelphia at the Outdoor Arena, or going to any of the places in New Jersey, from Atlantic City all the way up through Newark, some places in New York. And then even I would go see some of his jazz performances in New York City, and I'm talking back in the 80s when New York City was rough. Yeah. And he would have us, he'd be like, yo, do not, when you get to the venue, park as close to the venue as you can and run in. Do not be out on the street. Like, it was. Do
you remember what venue it was?
No, it was jazz clubs. So I mean, there were little spots in the middle of the hood.
Yeah, because I don't even know what the jazz venues were like back then, so I couldn't even run off a name or anything.
But it was all in Harlem, and it was all in areas where out of town plates meant that you were a target.
Yeah.
The only thing that was a savior was that I was a small child, so usually people would kind of let that pass. But, I spent a lot of time, and more importantly, he would take me, if I wasn't in camp, to the studio during the summer, and I would go hang out, sit behind a Neve console, and watch them record for hours on end. And I didn't know what I was watching at the time. I didn't understand what it was, but I knew I was interested. Like watching the tape go and watching the engineers work. And I always thought that that's how it had to be. And then one day I was playing guitar in some like dumb hardcore band, and the guy was just like, hey, the guy who was running the band was like, hey, we're gonna record finally. And I'm like, all right, fine, let's go record. And I thought we were going to a big studio. In my mind, we were going to a big studio. He gave me the address, and I put it into MapQuest and printed out some maps so I could get to it. It was somewhere in the middle of Philadelphia, and I was like, there must be a big studio there. And I pull up, and it's this guy's house. And I'm like, I think I'm in. I called them on the phone. It was early on in cell phone tech. And I was like, yo, bro, I think I'm in the wrong place because you gave me this address and all I see is houses. He was like, no, we're inside. You're at the right place. And I was like, what? Okay.
Yeah, because all you had seen was bigger studios at that point.
Big ass studios.
Wow.
And I roll inside, and it's this dude's basement. He's got fucking outdoor carpet on the ground in the basement, and he's got a little tiny room. And I'm like, what are you recording on? And he was like, oh, I'm recording right into this computer. And that's what got the fucking wheels going, bro.
Wow. That's
what got the wheels going. I was like, huh. So we recorded these 4 songs, and they came out like absolute dog shit. Sounds terrible. And it sounds terrible for a number of reasons. A, I didn't know what I was doing with tone. B, this guy didn't know what he was doing with recording. Right. It was all new for everybody involved. But it cost me $150, and we put out a 4-song demo, which you can find on the internet somewhere. I'll make sure I give you the link for it. Anyway, I watched this guy record, and fucking, it's like watching a monkey fuck a football through the whole damn thing. He's just fumbling everywhere. And we get to the end, we get the product, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, bitch, I could do this.
Right.
I could fucking do this. So my ass goes to the store with the last couple dimes I had, and I bought a new computer. I bought a 14-channel mixing board, which is in my fucking live room right now still. The board I bought to get started recording is sitting in my live room, and I use it for the PA in the studio. Kidding. I bought 6 mic cords, 6 cheap microphones, like the cheapest fucking microphones you could ever get, and I just started putting feelers out to bands that I was friends with. I was like, look, I'll come if you have a practice spot, I'll come to your practice spot and record you there.
Oh wow.
For free. I'm like, I'm not even trying to get anything out of it. I just want to learn this stuff. You just want
to get the experience.
The first thing I ever recorded is online right now, and you know what? It doesn't sound that fucking bad. It really doesn't sound that bad. I mean, it sounds bad.
What was it?
It's called the band was called Blood Runs Cold. Okay. And it's a 6-song EP.
Yeah.
And the key is the drummer of that band was 15, but he was like kind of a wonderkin drummer, and he is now, he is currently and has been the whole time the drummer of Circus Survive. So it's like I was working with someone that had control, so it made the whole process really easy, even considering he was 15.
Right.
And I have just built this recording situation literally out of a small thought after going to record the first time of, I can fucking do this because this asshole did it.
Wow.
And now I have this fucking huge ass, well, not huge, 700 square foot, but a 700 square foot commercial recording studio with, comparatively to what I went to this guy, high-end gear.
Right.
And it's just interesting to see that my journey, because I started this journey in 2001, so it's been 20 years this year that I've been recording, and the difference in my skill, and my equipment over the course of 20 years has changed so much, and my locations have changed. I was recording out of anybody's practice studio, and then I was recording out of the practice studio in Patterson, and then out of my mom's house, and then out of my ex-girlfriend's house, and then out of my own house here, and now at the studio. I've just been bouncing all over, and me and Brian Yan and rest in peace Jay almost opened a studio on Arch Street in Philadelphia, because Brian's parents own the building, but the 2 floors upstairs that we were going to build on, they're like crumbling, bro. It was just well beyond my ability to do anything with.
Right.
So I was like, I can't build in here and feel confident and comfortable. Like, it was just a struggle to empty the place out. Like, we emptied out 1 full floor of just trash and garbage. And by the time we got to that, there was still a 3rd floor that still had the same thing on it. And the stairs to get upstairs was just an absolute nightmare. So I was just like, I can't do this. And that's how we ended up working out of Patterson.
Right.
So we almost opened in Philadelphia. And there have been other places where I've worked for a minute. I worked at Trax East for a minute. Mm-hmm. I've worked at Red Planet Studios just outside of Philadelphia for a few minutes. But, I had to find my own way to get to the point that I'm at. And now I'm kind of here. But part of that journey is also playing music. Because I think if I never started playing in bands, I may not have ended up recording at all.
Right, and that's those 2 journeys kind of are separate, but they're parallel, really. Because I'll say, by the way, before we go in a different direction talking about music, I've been to a bunch of these locations that you're talking about, and I've seen the progression. So it's a natural thing, because I could see from the outside how you've learned and applied different shit, because I went to Patterson where you were doing shit off.
Hell, we recorded in my old apartment. We did vocals.
We did the vocals. That's what I was just going to say.
At my old apartment that I shared with Jay and some dudes that I don't speak to anymore.
Right. But I remember you. Well, what was the program you were using back then in Patterson?
I used a couple because I was still like learning what was what. So I used Cool Edit Pro.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Which was fucking terrible now that I look back on it. And I also used Cakewalk Pro Audio 9.
Okay.
I've used Cubase and Nuendo. I currently only use Pro Tools, but I own Logic, I own Reaper, and I own Cubase as well, just in case. Basically, I have these programs because if somebody sends me a project file, I want to be able to open it, and I have enough skill that I can get into the project file, open it, and export what I want so that I can get it into Pro Tools easily. Right. And then I'm good. Like, everybody talks about how Pro Tools isn't that important, or Pro Tools isn't that cool, or whatever, or just because it's quote-unquote the industry standard. My thing is, I've been working in Pro Tools since 2004 at this point. So that's 17 years of the same program. I have my 10,000 usage hours. I know almost every single quick key that is required for me to do something that I personally will do, and I don't have to even think about it. So it's like, for me to go backwards and start with Reaper, which is a pretty good program, or Logic or whatever, it just would take me, the learning curve would be so hard to unlearn everything that I know in Pro Tools and reapply it to something new in this new thing. I'm just like, no, I don't. It's just a waste of my time.
I think it's just go with what you know, because I know different people that use different programs, and not to go off on a crazy nerd tangent, but it's the same thing like people and their habits when it comes to what type of computers or what type of devices they use. There are people that are Apple, like iPhone people, and there are people that like Samsung or like their other Androids or whatever else. Just like there's people that like PCs, people that like Macs. people like their different software, because I know plenty of people that are Pro Tools people and love Pro Tools, but then I know other people that prefer to use Logic or whatever. So it's just,
all those products. It's just a user interface. They're all doing the exact same thing in the background. Use the one that makes you feel most comfortable and confident.
Exactly.
And stop worrying about the rest of the shit.
The only thing you have to worry about is when you're working on projects with other people.
Yep. It's easier if everybody's on the same.
But that's also why it's preferable, like what you were talking about, that you can go and use Logic or use whatever and be able to take that, take other files and flip it into what you use.
Right.
Which, honestly, some studio people can do, some people can't. More people should, just because it makes it easier for you as an engineer, that you can get files. You don't have to worry about being crippled because somebody's not using Pro Tools. You're still perfectly capable of doing shit, even if the project started with something else. So I think more engineers should do that. Some do, some don't. Whatever. But that's also why when people are picking a studio, different things stick out, and being versatile like that is a plus.
Yeah, like one of the projects I'm working on right now is this band from Philadelphia called Cycle of Abuse. And what happened was they actually programmed out all their drums like how they thought they wanted to write the song in Reaper. And they have 5 songs on a long ass timeline with all the time signature changes, and then they had all the guitars and bass pre-recorded on top of it with just clean DIs, but then they had the plug-in on for the guitars to make them sound like a guitar amp, etc. And I was like, so can you send me demos? And when they sent me demos, I noticed that they were like really well laid out, and I was like, do you have this in like a program? And then they're like, yeah, because it didn't sound like a live recording or anything. Right. And he was like, no, it's all programmed out in Reaper. So I was like, send me your whole Reaper program.
Yeah.
So I opened it in Reaper, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, all right. And I exported all the MIDI, and then I exported all the guitars and bass into just raw files, imported in the Pro Tools, and it brought over everything. And I'm talking all the time signature changes, all the BPM changes. It brought over the map of all the drums and all the guitars and bass and vocals that they pre-recorded were already done. And all I had to do was just a little bit of editing, and they came in and knocked out drums in like 3 hours. And then we just spent the rest of the time actually like picking tones and like working on the actual record instead of having to sit there and replay all the stuff that they already played in. And I was like, I wish all projects were this easy. And like, they're nice kids. I liked working with them in general, but it was so painless that every band could do this if just one member in the band took the initiative to just know just the smallest amount of recording. The smallest amount.
Yeah, which some do, some don't. I'm not knocking the ones that don't. But stuff like that definitely helps, and you end up getting your money's worth because you're not spending your money on all that extra bullshit. You're spending the money on the real work getting done instead of all this extra stuff. So I think that's important. But like I said, I don't want to go too off on a tangent when it comes to all the technical stuff. But
that's too much technical stuff right there.
Let's switch tracks there and go in a different direction. How did you end up playing guitar, and who were the guys that got you started on that path?
So, all right. Let's take it back again to the same point in time, like early 80s. and I'm going and watching people perform live. I'm watching people perform in a recording studio, and whether you know or you don't know, Kool and the Gang has real instruments, so that's guitars and bass and drums and etc. And I'm watching people perform. So I was listening to hip hop, but I was listening to new wave stuff. My aunt, who is only 2 years older than me, and her friend, who's only a year older than her, and like their older brothers and sisters were all passing music around, and I heard the Dead Kennedys at, I'm gonna say, 6 or 7 years old. I got a tape, and I'm listening to the tape, and I'm loving this punk thing. So, it's the only place where I had on one side the Dead Milkmen, and on the other side I had the Dead Kennedys. That was like my introduction to things that were kind of outside the realm. But then as I'm getting older, I'm listening to pretty much anything that's on the radio. And in 86, as you know, you had an occasional Beastie Boys song that would come on the radio and like hype you up. But that was also the moment in time where Guns N' Roses broke through, and Welcome to the Jungle was like the thing. And I was enthralled with that band and that sound. And one of my uncles, my Uncle Joe, really noticed that I took a liking to anything that had guitar in it. And he went out and actually bought me my first guitar. And he's like, it was just random. It wasn't even Christmas or anything like that. He just really wanted me to have a guitar, so he bought me this janky guitar. I don't even know what kind of guitar it was. Doesn't matter. It was a piece of shit. But it was a guitar, and it was my guitar. And he was like, look, your mom said that she would get you lessons. I got you a guitar. Here's a guitar. Here's an amplifier. I want you to play if you really want to play.
Nice.
And I took lessons for 8 months, and once the thing package my mom signed up for was out, I quit because I hated going to the lessons. I hated practicing Mary Had a Little Lamb. I wanted to rip riffs. I was
going to say, you wanted to rip.
I wanted to rip real riffs. I didn't want all the basics. Now looking back, I wish I had really taken to the basics because it would make me such a better guitar player. But as a kid, all I wanted to do was be Slash. Like, I just, I wanted to rip riffs like everybody else was just, and like, I didn't understand distortion. I didn't understand any of that.
Yeah.
My guitar didn't make any of those fucking noises. And I'm like looking at the TV and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So after...
What's the secret?
Yeah. So I stopped playing guitar probably by 88. And it just sat around. But I was still listening to music. And that's when I'm finding Megadeth and I'm finding Metallica and I'm finding, all the stuff from the late 80s.
So how were you finding all of this stuff?
MTV, baby.
Okay.
You figure in 86 I'm 10, and that's about the time when I started staying up late.
Right.
Now, if you know me, you know that if you text me at 2 a.m, there's a good chance that I'm fucking responding to you because I am a night owl. And I have been a night owl since about 1986, 1987. I would just stay up listening to the radio, and I would just scroll the dial all night, like looking for music. And that was also about the time that I got cable, and not just cable, but I got cable in my room. And the important part is my room was above the living room, and no one else was anywhere near that room.
Oh, nice.
And my niece shared a room on the other side of the upstairs attic, and she slept with the TV on, but she wasn't watching it. It was just on for noise.
Right. So
me having my TV on, nobody even recognized that I was actually awake watching TV. So I'm up, 1, 2 o'clock at night just watching MTV or listening to the radio and just like hitting record. And I'm just digging and digging and digging and finding new music, and most of it was rock-based music. Okay. And, you know, I'm talking hair metal bands and adjacent metal bands that were hair metal-ish, but not really hair metal. You know, there was that area of stuff in between and then beyond. Yeah. And then I found Slayer.
Well, give me a couple bands just because
Rat.
I want to have fun with this. Okay. That's definitely
Cinderella,
one of mine.
Winger, fucking all that shit. I was listening to all kinds of Scorpions, like anything that was on the edge. I was listening to it, but I was also listening to Public Enemy and like all kinds of hip hop stuff, Dougie Fresh, etc. Like whatever. Like I was just a music sponge at that time, and I was just taking little bits and pieces. And you know, I wasn't playing anymore. I was just focused on listening and trying to find copies of things where I could, or recording things off the radio. And by the time I got to it was like, let's just call it 94. I had already gone through that musical progression of finding sort of punk, but as well like the grunge thing and like heavier music. So like full on, I'd heard fucking Cannibal Corpse at that point, or Obituary or whatever it was. Like I had heard some like wild shit, and I got to college and we would go to the Princeton Record Exchange, and I'm talking not just go, we would go 3, 4, 6 times a week, drive into Princeton, and just every dime that we would make working our shitty jobs would go to buying music. And I have 5,000 CDs that are just like laying around right now because I spent so much time and so much money. But the important part is that in the same parking lot was Farrington's Music, and we would go, and to get to Farrington's you'd have to, to get to Chuck's where they sold sandwiches and whatever, you kind of had to walk by Farrington's to get to it. So every day I'm walking by and there's this blue Strat in the window with a maple neck, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy that fucking thing. I'm gonna buy that thing. And I spent 6 months like working myself up the nerve to buy this fucking guitar. The guitar is actually sitting back there like in pieces somewhere.
No shit.
Like I took it apart because I was gonna like rework it. It's just like a Strat, and I was gonna put in like new wiring, but I ordered 2 different black Strat, pick guards, and neither one of them fit because this is some shitty knockoff Strat. It's not
a real one. Strat.
But I bought this guitar and I just started buying stuff. Like I got it with a crate head, so like a little, not a head, but a crate combo.
Yeah, the little practice amp.
Like it actually had a 12-inch speaker in it, and then I bought the orange distortion pedal because I was like, this must be what everybody's using. It says distortion. I'm like, what do I know? And then I bought some Digitech pedals because I was like, well, this have all kinds of effects in it, and I can just plug it in the front, and just like buying stuff on stuff on stuff. And I'm slowly learning how to play songs, and I didn't start playing like simple shit. Like I didn't go, oh, well, let me play Green Day because I really like Green Day. I was like, no, let me learn how to fucking play Metallica, or let me learn how to play Slayer, or something like really wild.
Right.
And that's really my journey. And that was like 94. I didn't play in a band until at least 98.
Okay.
So I spent 4 years just woodshedding to get to the point where I had enough confidence to be like, yeah, I'd like to be in a band with you. It's not like I just picked up a guitar and was immediately in.
Right.
So I just spent years just plunking around at my house. But in 97, 98, Chris Frashella was working at Russo's Music Center, and I walked in one day and I was like, look, I want to buy an actual amp. I have this crate piece of shit, but I want something that actually sounds good. And he's like, I'll sell you this 5150 and cab for $600.
Nice.
And I was like, 600? And like the price tag on the head was like 1,200, not even including the cab. He sold me the head and cab for $600 total.
Nice.
So he's been hooking me up for years, and I took this thing home and I lit that bitch up, and I still use that exact same head all the time.
Nice.
It's just part of what goes on at Landmine Studios.
That's awesome.
And my journey has been through all types of music and going to see all types of shows. So I'm talking, I would go to a ska show one day, and I'd be at a metal show the next day, and then I'd be at a hardcore show the day after that. Like, I was just a musical sponge, going to and watching or listening to anything that piqued my interests. And just because you were playing doesn't mean that I liked it. Like, it needed to be good. Like, right. I didn't like just any old trash, or at least I don't think I did. So that's kind of how I got here. I'm sure there will be more stories, but that's like the short winding road of how I started listening and how I started playing, which also culminates in how I ended up with this dumbass recording studio. Because if I hadn't started looking for a band, I would have never ended up in that band that recorded in 2000, which right. would have then had me start recording on my own in 2001.
Right.
And it turns out I'm still friends with most of the guys that were in that first original band. And what happened was I was going to Mercer County College, and I met this girl, Karen. And Karen's like, hey, I know you listen to heavy music. Have you ever listened to my ex-boyfriend's band? I can't remember the name of the band off the top, but she was like, his name is Justin, and him and his best friend Brad are in this band. And I'm like, no, I've never heard of him, but sounds cool. And then she's like, well, you're going to Rider University next year, and they already go there. You should just catch them there. So, like, this girl that I had been hanging out with for months and months and months warned me to look for these two muscle-bound freaks that went to Rider University that had a band. So I'm just wandering around the university when I got there in '99, and I'm like, I run into these two. I mean, I'm talking, these are gargantuan dudes. Like, they're huge. So Brad is like quintessential Viking style, like, big guy. He's not like cut, ripped, whatever. He's just like a mountain of a human being. He's about 6'4" and about 6'4" deep, like, just huge muscle guy.
Right.
And he had some record for leg lifts or some shit like that, and at the college it was crazy, like some 500 pounds, or I don't know, fucking know. It was something just that blew my mind. And then Justin was just like the more cut, like, ripped guy, but you see him and he's walking around and he's got his chest all puffed out, and I'm like, those are the two guys. Those are the two guys. And I walked up and I was like, yo, Karen told me to come talk to you. She said that you guys are thinking about starting a new band, and she said I should talk to you. I'm Len. And then, boom, they were like, yeah, let's jam. And, we started a band. And that's how I ended up with the fucking studio. So it's all Karen's fault.
That's pretty wild. And
now Karen's son is 1 month younger than London.
Wow.
But I haven't gotten a chance to put the two of them together in a room yet.
Yeah.
Let them bounce off a wall together. But at some point it'll happen.
Well, yeah. Now that things are starting to get somewhat back to normal,
because I'm still friends with her as well. Like, that's one thing. Side note of this conversation being about music is that when I make friends with people, if I find that the relationship is solid enough for me to continue being friends with you, we are friends until you choose to not be my friend or do something really fucking dumb that makes me not want to be your friend. Like, I'm not the guy that is out looking to ruin friendships over anything.
Right.
Like, if we're cool, we're cool. And I'm more than happy to see you and talk to you until something fucked up happens.
Until something stupid.
Right. So, and literally, we've been in touch. Me and Karen have been in touch since we were in college together from '97 till now. So it's, what is that, 24 years?
Yeah.
And she's gotten married, has a kid, and whatever, and I'm doing my thing, but we still catch up at least a couple times a year just to make sure shit's cool, because we were actually friends and we're still friends, and without her I wouldn't be where I am now.
I was just going to say, you remind her that this is all your fault.
This is all me being friends with you is technically her fault.
You being friends with a lot of people is technically her fault.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy. But that's what happens. Little things turn into bigger things down the road.
Yep. So, how did you end up here?
Well, from when I was young, I was always into music. And a big reason for that was my older brother. I have two brothers. I have an older brother and a younger brother. If you've come out to shows, there's at least a decent chance that you've seen my younger brother, because he comes out a lot when I play, and a lot of times he'll come out even if we're just going to see other people play. My older brother passed a couple of years ago from cancer. When I was young, my older brother, we had like a 13-year age gap.
It's a pretty big age gap.
Yeah. So, we all lived together with my parents. He had his own bedroom. Me and my younger brother shared a bedroom. My older brother was a musician, and he would go out and play in cover bands. That's how he met his wife, because his wife's brother was a drummer. He was a singer. He also played drums, but he was mostly a singer. And they were in a band together, and that's how he met his wife.
Okay.
He was into a lot of the classic rock stuff that you would expect in like the 70s. He was doing this the mid to late 70s. But a lot of the more heavy rock, what became metal, his record collection was a lot of Van Halen. The cover bands that he was doing, they would do Van Halen, they would do Judas Priest. He was doing some lighter stuff like Foreigner, but it was more rock based. And his record collection was a lot of that stuff, and like Rush Moving Pictures and Led Zeppelin and things like that. So he would listen to his records, and I started to get exposed to that stuff. And then when I was really young, they were giving guitar lessons at the school, so my parents were like, hey, let's get him a cheap acoustic guitar and do some lessons. So I did the lessons for a little while, and then it kind of faded out. Sort of like what you were saying about, like, I don't want to sit here and play Mary Had a Little Lamb.
I just don't want to do it.
Because I was starting to get, at first I was a radio kid, just listening to pop music, stuff that was on the radio, Duran Duran or Hall & Oates or whatever. And then I started to get into the stuff that my brother was into, like Van Halen, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was 7th or 8th, I think I was 7th grade, somebody lent me 2 cassettes. It was Iron Maiden, Power Slave, and Master Puppets.
Both killer records.
And that was what set me on the path. Because those kids lent me those tapes, and I was just like, oh shit, what is this? And
You're
from
like, oh,
there,
shit, what have I done?
Yeah. So from there, I started getting my own stuff. Like I remember to this day, the first cassette that I ever purchased was, I think at the same time I bought Power Slave and Made in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The first record I ever bought was Ride the Lightning.
That's a record.
Yeah. And like what you said is about being a sponge, like I just was fully soaking it in, everything. More of the hair metal stuff like Rat, the heavier stuff like what was early thrash like Anthrax and Metallica, stuff like that. Then, and also stuff like Def Leppard, And
Bro,
then I got
listened to all kinds of Def Leppard. I
Oh,
loved
yeah.
it.
Yeah. I think I said it when we were talking to Brian. Like, I was excited to see Def Leppard because I've never seen them.
I've never seen them
bands
either.
I've wanted to see that I've never seen. I was excited that they were going to do the stadium tour, and then that got canceled, and now supposedly it's going to happen next year.
Well, I'm going to go then.
Oh, yeah, I definitely want to go.
All right, let's just go. Let's just say we're going right now and we're going to go.
I'm in. So, I got into high school, started hanging out with metal kids right off the bat in high school. 1 month, not even a month, it was the end of September when I started high school in 86 that the bus accident happened, that Cliff died.
Mm-hmm.
People were freaking out. There were candles in the corner of the yard at school. It was a big deal. And I was already like getting fully immersed into that world, so that just made it even more.
Wait, you started high school in 86, bro?
Yeah.
How?
Because
I don't feel like you're that much older than me.
Because I was a smart kid and got skipped in grade school.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was always a year younger than everybody else.
Okay. Because I didn't start high school until 90. 90 was my first year.
Yeah. And I was born in October, so I started
early.
I was a little early, but then you add me being skipped, so I was real early.
Right.
So in high school, we had the tape trading thing going on. Everybody was trading tapes, making copies, doing mixtapes, but also just full records. And that was how I got exposed to a lot of other music. That's how I got exposed to a lot of different metal, and that's how I got exposed to hardcore also, because those same kids were trading tapes, and suddenly here I am getting DRI Crossover and Agnostic Front and Carnivore and Leeway, mixed in with like Hell Awaits and all this other metal stuff that was flying around at the time, like Celtic Frost and Venom.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all mixed together. And that was where I got music, because I know I've mentioned it on here before. The Bronx was the last place on planet Earth you could get fucking cable.
Yeah, you did.
So I was down with Headbangers Ball, but it wasn't until later. Besides, I got a couple of years on you, but that combined with no cable, because we didn't get cable until like the early 90s.
Wow.
So I think like we had HBO, but that was really it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't think we got cable until like maybe 91.
Yeah, so my grandparents had cable. Like, I saw MTV basically come on air. That's how soon they had cable.
Yeah, see, we didn't have that at all. The Bronx was like the last place to get what. It was definitely the last of the 5 boroughs to get wired for cable. But I think just in general, it was one of the last places in the world to get friggin' cable. Because all my friends are talking about all the stuff on cable, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But on the flip side of that, because we had back in the old days of UHF and VHF TVs, we had U68, which was a channel. It was a UHF channel that showed music videos all day.
Right.
And every night they would have the Power Hour. And I think it was every night. It wasn't every Saturday night like the Headbangers Ball was, I think. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, Headbangers was, every Saturday.
Headbangers was every Saturday night. But U68 had the Power Hour, so they'd show an hour of just metal videos.
Which is just awesome.
Yeah, and I used to sit there and record it so I could go back and watch it. And that was how I got exposed to a lot of music. And then also Saturday nights, there was a station that I think was like a classic station. I don't think it was classical necessarily, but it was more like standards. And the guy that owned it, they were up in Westchester. The guy that owned it let his son have 6 hours on Saturday night. So it was midnight metal.
That's awesome.
It was WRTN, Midnight Metal. So from midnight to 6 a.m., Saturday night, Sunday morning, they would just play metal, and like I think they did interviews too, I forget. And I would sit there and just listen to it and record it so I could go back and listen to songs and stuff like that. So I got exposed to all kinds of shit that way too. And like I said, I was just a sponge. I was absorbing all this shit, everything you could think of, all through high school. King Diamond, Flotsam and Jetsam, you name it, all kinds of stuff. Also, around that time, switching tracks, my younger brother and I were both interested in music. So one Christmas, I ended up getting a practice pad and drumsticks, and my brother got a guitar.
Okay.
Because I was kind of into drums and was thinking maybe I want to be a drummer. We pulled the Van Halen brothers. Because if you know the story of the Van Halen brothers, originally Eddie was the drummer. Because I ended up picking up his guitar, and I was much more interested in his guitar all of a sudden.
And then he started playing.
He picked up my drumsticks and the practice pad, started playing drums, and then they got us lessons. He started taking drum lessons. I started taking guitar lessons. I only took them for like a couple of months. I just kind of faded on it at one point, but I was full into guitar, and he was doing the drum thing. He doesn't play drums anymore, but he did play drums for a couple of years. So I was playing guitar, and I was just fully immersed in it. Like, I would come home from school in high school and just lock myself in my room and play along with And Justice for All, and play along with Them by King Diamond, and play along with all these records. And that was what I did constantly. And
yo, I don't mean to sidetrack your story. Just kind of around this whole situation. When I was really getting into playing guitar and playing that dumbass blue riff machine, I started getting into buying rack gear. So just any old rack gear that was guitar related, I was buying it. And Andy turned to me one day because I was trying to play something in front of him, because it was like right before or right after bowling one night. And he turns to me, he's like, "How many of these dumb little boxes are you going to buy?" And I was like, "I don't know, but probably a lot." And it turns out I bought a whole fucking lot of them.
See, I never did any of that stuff. I had like a pedal or two, but that was it. But what I did, I had the guitar and the practice amp. I had some no-name knockoff Red Explorer type of thing. I think it was a Memphis.
Ooh, sounds fancy.
Yeah, it was really not. It was definitely plywood, because as I really used that thing and the paint started to come off of it, you could see that it was plywood. But I started with that, and then I got a Kramer, and then over the years, I've had a lot of different guitars, but those were my starters really. But yeah, I had just had that in a practice amp, and I figured out, well, if you turn up the thing that says gain, it sounds like the stuff that I want to sound like. So the gain was all the way up, and yeah, I just sat in my room and was just playing constantly, and I never learned how to read music, but I was really good with my ears, so I could hear shit and play it, because that was how I learned. Like, I just was listening to stuff, and I would look at like I had the magazines with like the tabs and stuff, and I would look at the tabs, and between the tabs and just my ear, that's how I learned how to play.
Yeah, that's how I learned how to play.
Yeah, because the lessons that I took were cool, and like we got into basics of like major scales, but that was about it. And like, I was never good with reading music. Like, I just it was all ear for me. Yeah, it was all ear to me. So I was that's what I would do. I would come home and sit there and fucking riff, And a couple of times in high school, I would get together and jam with a couple of friends and play the For Whom the Bell Tolls for 3 hours or some bullshit. But yeah, play that or fucking Am I Evil 100 times. Right. But I didn't play live for years, just like what you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Because I was in high school and was jamming with my friends in their garage or whatever, and then like even after high school, there were some friends of mine in college that I would jam with, but we never played out. And it wasn't until probably 92 or 93 that I had some friends, and we ended up starting a band that was like a Faith No More type of rock band. Mm-hmm. And we played our first couple of live shows. We played like the Bond Street Cafe. We played the Underworld in Manhattan, and we played a couple other places, maybe the Spiral, I forget. And then that band kind of fizzled out. But that was my first live experience.
Well, let's level something real quick.
Go ahead.
We're both talking about the same time period of like finding music. Yeah. Between, let's call it 84 and 88. It was like the heyday for both of us of like really finding music.
Yeah.
And the music that we both find ourselves most connected to at this point, which is the general umbrella of hardcore, didn't even get started until like the late 70s, early 80s. So it was only like 4 to 6 years in, and we were just finding music. We hadn't even found hardcore yet, but considering where we're at right now versus when we both kind of found hardcore, which is in the early 90s, we've been around for the vast majority of the music that it is that we listen to anyway.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to say I'm not a ground floorer because I was like 4, but I'm an early adopter.
Oh, sure. Well, the other thing too is if you look at it, the roots of it, like I'm a metal guy.
Right, you found it through metal.
I'm very open about the fact that I'm a metal guy. Yes, I love hardcore, but I also love metal. Iron Maiden's my favorite band. And yeah, I found hardcore through metal, but I still very much love metal. And metal got its start really in the in the late 60s.
Yep.
And really the roots, the music that I got started with from my brother's record collection was really the roots of metal.
Mm-hmm.
Because
like Thin Lizzy.
Well, yeah, Thin Lizzy, he didn't have any Thin Lizzy. I didn't get into Thin Lizzy until later on and went back and really got into them. But if you're talking about stuff like those early Van Halen records or Kiss or Rush, because one little part that I'm leaving out of this thing that I think I talked about on here before was that I also had cousins that lived in Queens, and I used to go visit them sometimes, and we used to hang out. They had their attic like done up as like their hangout space. They were a little older, but they had an 8-track player up there, and they had like Women and Children First and Kiss Alive 2 on 8-track. So that's what we used to listen to when we were up there all the time.
Right.
So between that and my brother's record collection, like that was the stuff that really got us going, got me going in that direction as far as music. But my brother's record collection, you're talking like Rush Moving Pictures and like Van Halen 2 and Kiss Alive. So that was all the roots for me. And Led Zeppelin 2 and stuff like that. And that was just the roots. And from there, just taking off.
So when I was a kid, and my aunt and her friends were all getting me into like punk shit, for me to get the tapes home, I had to hide them in something. And as a kid, I was obsessed with playing backgammon. I don't know how. Like, I ended up playing the game, I guess, with my mom once or twice, and then I just got pretty good at playing the game. I couldn't tell you how to play it at this point, but I was like I had my own backgammon set. And the way the sets are set up is that there's like, it's like a bifold case. It's kind of like a briefcase. and you have their chips in 2 pouches, and then the inside of the thing is open. So I would hide tapes in my backgammon set, so that my mom and dad wouldn't find them, because a tape that says Dead Kennedys or Dead Milkmen on it it's not going to fly for a 6-7-year-old. Just not going to fly. But Lori's like, you could take it, but just don't get caught. And I mean, she's like 9 at the time. She doesn't know any better.
Right.
But so I know what you mean about, like, you found it in a specific way.
Yeah, I never had to sneak around. Like, my parents didn't get it, but it wasn't a secret. It's like my older brother was already into it, so it was already in the house.
Right.
So it wasn't an issue. But it was just, they were just like, okay. And then when I started going to concerts, they would take us. Because I went to my first concert in '88, and then I was totally hooked. My first concert was Monsters of Rock at Giant Stadium. It was, and it's funny because some of these are bands that you mentioned. It was Van Halen, the Scorpions, Dokken, Metallica, and Kingdom Come.
Which is, looking back, an absolutely wild show.
Yeah, in '88, that was like was a crazy tour. But also, and I've talked about it before. I think I talked about it a little bit when Doc was on. That was when Metallica just blew up, or was starting to blow up, because Master of Puppets, they had opened for Ozzy, and that got them a lot of attention. This was right before, because this was June. And September was when And Justice for All dropped. So they were doing one song off Justice, which was Harvester of Sorrow, that was also being played on the radio at that point. And everybody was there to see Metallica.
I can't even imagine that. Like, I know we've probably talked about this. This is probably the 4th time we've talked about this on the air. But it's hard for me to put my head around just seeing Metallica at that point. You know?
Yeah. And Cliff had already passed. This was Newstead. Because Newstead joined, and then they just toured solid.
Well, yeah, they were running away from their pain. They needed to be on the road and just doing the things they had to do.
And then they recorded Justice, and then they were out on this tour before the record came out. And seriously, it's one of those things that, like, I don't think this could ever happen again nowadays. But it was just such a huge build, and everybody there was there to see Metallica. There were a lot of people. This is a stadium, and sure, the prices aren't what they are now.
Yeah,
but it was still a good amount of money, and it was a stadium. And you had people going there. This was in the afternoon. They played probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And you had people come to see them and then leave. Stadium prices, and they're coming to see Metallica, and they're bouncing. And everybody was there wearing a Metallica shirt.
Because that's what it was at the time.
Yeah, because Justice was what put them over the top. So this was just bubbling just under.
I'm just telling you right now, I had heard the name Metallica before And Justice came, but I knew the name after that record came out.
Yeah, that record came out and was like a bulldozer because it just put them everywhere.
I had to get that record, and I got that record. And I don't listen to it anymore. Like, I actually have a hard time listening to it now because I listen to it and I think about just how disjointed a record it really is. It's just like riff salad. And I know they kind of made it into a record and into songs, but like, I feel like it's just kind of all over the place in comparison to the stuff prior to it and post it.
See,
I think it has great riffs on it. Like, don't get me wrong. I think some of the riffs are awesome on the record, but I don't feel like there are great songs on the record. They're not songs. Then they're kind of in my opinion, the prototype for what we had in the late 90s, early 2000s of bands doing riff salad. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, here's a song that's 5-7 riffs in a row,
right,
that are not, there's
that
no
never repeat.
That never repeat. And it's fine to be like stream of conscience and whatever, but as a whole, for me, that record was a turning point, but also now it's kind of like a hinge point, because I'm like, every time it comes on, I'm like, I am so bored with this, because I am now all about songwriting, and their songwriting was ass on that song. But I think that has to do with the fact that there was no Cliff.
I mean, it's the last album they did that had the influence of Cliff, because Cliff
wrote some of it.
Well, he didn't really write any of it. He doesn't
he
get
there for
he only got a writing credit for one part, which was actually the spoken part over To Live Is to Die.
Okay.
But it bears his influence because he was the music guy. His parents were classical musicians. So all the 2-part harmony stuff came from Cliff.
Okay.
So even though he didn't write it, it very much had his influence all over it. And it's funny because if you know about Cliff and the way he fit into that band, it's kind of wild. There was a really good book. I'd have to look it up and find the actual title. There's a good book about Cliff that I bought years ago. And it talks about his influence on the band, because he was the guy that brought the harmony, like I said, and kind of the classical influence, but he was also the guy that clued them into the Misfits. So it's kind of wild, the wide influence that he had. The book is called To Live Is to Die, The Life and Death of Metallica's Cliff Burton by Joel McIver. Great book. But it talks heavily about the different influences that he brought to the band, which really showed on that record. And I love that record. I understand why people don't like that record. And it's one of those things. Yes, there's no fucking bass on it. I know. But
I'm not even worried about the bass.
But that's the first thing a lot of people talk about. But it's one of those things that's just, it's not a perfect record, but for what it is, it's amazing. They have better songwriting, because honestly, Master of Puppets is a fucking masterpiece.
Yes.
There's no dud on Master of Puppets.
There's barely a dud, in my opinion, on Ride the Lightning.
Escape is kind of
It's not terrible, though.
No, it's not terrible, but I don't think it's as good as some of the other stuff. But I know Hetfield has always talked about how he doesn't like Escape, but I don't hate it. But it's not my favorite.
I like those two. Those are my two favorite records from that band.
What, Puppets and Ride the Lightning?
And Ride the Lightning.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Justice always holds a special place for me, because honestly, Justice is how I learned how to play guitar. Because like I said before, coming home, locking myself up in my room, Justice was my teacher. That's how I learned how to play. I sat there and played all that shit over and over. And it's not a perfect record. Like I said, Freight Ends of Sanity is kind of but overall, I love that record. And I wouldn't say anything bad about it. It just was at that right time, because 88 was when I was really playing guitar, and I was in high school and really kind of finding myself, and that was just that right time. So that record kind of influenced me more than anything else.
Ride the Lightning. So you're right. Escape might be the only questionable track.
Yeah.
But Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice, Creeping Death, and The Call of Cthulhu. There's only one questionable track on there, and it's still not that bad. The problem is it's 4 minutes and 24 seconds of
But meanwhile, Master
is perfect from end to end.
There's no dud. There's not even a lull on Master.
So that's Battery, Master, The Thing That Should Never Be.
Thing That Should Not Be is...
Should Not Be, whatever. And then...
That song, when I was a kid, blew my fucking mind. Because that was the heaviest thing I had ever heard. Oh my God. I heard that song. I was like, what is this? Like, I couldn't even fully... My young brain couldn't even fully process it at first. Because it was just so fucking heavy to me.
See, for me, the thing that got me the most on that record was either Battery or Damage Incorp.
Well,
so Damage Incorporated.
Damage was just crazy because it was just, oh my God, I don't even know how to describe it.
Assault.
It was just 100,000 miles an hour from start to finish.
But that's where you hear that punk influence.
Yeah, but it was just.
But it was still metal as fuck.
Oh yeah, and it was just a beating. It was just a beating of your eardrums, and it was just. But that whole record, there was nothing like that.
No, not at all. And Orion is a fucking track.
Orion is a masterpiece, and Orion is Cliff's finest moment by far.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing them do it at Yankee Stadium live, I'm not ashamed to say it brought a tear to my eye because it was just so fucking perfect. And it was so fucking good. I mean, it was the best it's going to be without Cliff.
Right.
And they started adding it into their set list after all these years as kind of a tribute to Cliff. And to see them play in Yankee Stadium, which was just tremendous in itself. Plus, it's my home because I'm born and raised in the Bronx. And to see them pay tribute to Cliff like that was just fucking massive.
So Master was released March 3rd, 1986. I was 10.
Yeah.
I wasn't even 10 yet. I was 9. I wasn't 10 for another whole 8 months.
Yeah, and I
didn't know about this fucking record at that moment. I had found Guns N' Roses' shit at this point.
Yeah,
but I had
a little bit later.
Just a little bit later.
Yeah, because GNR came out in 88, but didn't really blow up until 89, right?
I thought it was sooner than that. Hold on. July 1987.
Okay. So it came out in 87, but blew up in 88.
Yeah, but I heard about it early.
Right.
Like, when that first video came out, I was on it immediately. Welcome to the Jungle, I was on it. But, finding Guns N' Roses and finding Metallica are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't find Metallica for a little while until after I found Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses, I was clued into them early on, and I had the CD, but they didn't really blow up until a little bit later. Because Jungle started to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fully into the Metallica thing. Because I always liked the heavier. I liked a lot of more, not the Guns N' Roses. I don't consider Guns N' Roses to be hair metal. Although they got kind of lumped into that.
They get lumped into it.
But
they're just a pure rock band.
Yeah, but I was also into a lot of the more hair metal type stuff, just like you were talking about. And I was into stuff like Rat and Cinderella and Winger and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was also listening to like the heavier shit. I was getting into Slayer. I was getting into Testament and Overkill, stuff like that.
I used to ride around in my mom's car and make her listen to whatever the fuck I wanted to listen to. that whole driver makes the choice thing is just not right. So I mean, I was getting copies of these records. So I got my copy of Appetite for Destruction. I won it on the fucking boardwalk down in Seaside at one of those spin wheel things.
Yeah.
And, we listened to fucking Guns N' Roses back front to back for months on end. And, I mean, I had my mom in the fucking car singing along to It's So Easy, Night Train, Mr. Brownstone, like pretty much all these songs that are all about doing fucking drugs.
Wow.
And she's just singing along, and I know she knows what it means, and she knows that at 9 or 10, I don't know what the fuck I'm singing, and she's just going with it. Yeah.
She's like, this little motherfucker don't even know.
Right. Because I thought Mr. Brownstone was just Mr. Brownstone, not Mr. Heroin. Like, I didn't know that that's what he meant.
What's heroin?
He's been knocking. He won't leave me alone.
That's so funny.
Now, like, looking back, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy if you look at it that way, yeah.
But I feel the same way. Now, this is a major tangent, but in the 90s, I also listened to just, like, plain old rock music. And there's that band, was it Third Eye Blind? Or, I don't know, Third Eye Blind, they had, like, a whole bunch of songs, but one of the songs is legitimately about doing meth.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That song, do.
Oh, really?
That song. So one of the lyrics in that song, I'm packed and I'm holding, she leads for me, something motivation, and then he gets around to saying, doing crystal meth will pick you up, it won't let you down, it won't let you break. Like, and I'm just like, this got out on the fucking radio?
No shit. I had no idea.
And then, like, at one point he's like, I do a hit, and then I take a bump, and I bumped up, and then I bumped again. I said I bumped again, and I'm like, he's legitimately just talking about doing fucking meth.
That's fantastic.
Yes. And then the lyric goes, like, how do I get back down to the place where blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, he's singing about I want something else because he can't continue to do crystal meth.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And it's this
mind is blown right now.
Candy sweet song about doing crystal meth.
That's great. Yeah, I didn't know that at all.
And then they had another song that was, what is it? Called Jumper. And the whole song, I mean, it was a huge song, but the song is about, I wish you'd step back from that ledge, my friend, trying to talk his friend out of jumping off a fucking bridge. And they made a song out of it, and it was huge.
Wow.
So, like, the 90s were this weird time, and I was fully engrossed, as I said, as a sponge, listening to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And, like, there are crazy little tidbits of things that come up like that.
Yeah,
where it's like completely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I didn't catch all that stuff.
Well, if you never really listened to the song, if you wrote it off, you would have never found it.
Yeah, I was busy listening to Hell Awaits or something, probably. So,
that's your call.
But then again, listen, if I knew it was about that stuff, I might have listened to it. So
it's just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I was all over the place musically because, like I said, I was into a lot of hair metal stuff, but I was all into everything metal or metal related. Like, I wasn't listening to pop music really. I wasn't listening to other types of, like, I was fully engrossed in it, and that was my thing for a long time. I eventually started to go and branch out in other directions, but for the longest time, like, that was it for me. Like, everything hard rock, metal, I can't fuck with anything else. Which, whatever, might be closed-minded, but that's kind of where I was at the time. I was an angry young kid. I wanted to hear about Satan. Although I did listen to Stryper back then.
Hey.
So
speaking of Satan, and speaking of Christian shit, I found Zayo one day. So I used to take my Discman to the Princeton Record Exchange. I would just take it with me, headphones and a little Discman. So kids were talking about
Right.
1997, 98, 99, when Discmans were a thing. You didn't have MP3 players. MP3s barely even existed. Like, that was right at the rise of Napster.
Right.
Anyway, I would take my fucking CD player and I'd go to Princeton Record Exchange and I'd just start listening to shit. And I picked up Zayo, Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest.
Oh yeah.
And I pulled it out of the case. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I know this is a Christian label, but this fucking cover looks so goddamn
This does not
evil.
look very Christian.
This looks so fucking evil.
I know.
And I'm looking at it and I put it in, and then that first riff hits and I was like,
Oh my
I'm
God.
buying this. I am buying this.
That's what happened to me with them, because I saw that record. I didn't know it was a Christian label, nothing. I listened to it, and it wasn't until after I was listening to it steady for a while that somebody's like, yeah, they're a Christian band. I'm like, what?
You're like, what?
What?
That don't sound like no fucking
idea.
Christian nothing.
No idea.
That sounds
I was
like pure evil.
Oh yeah.
Dan Wyatt's voice is fucking insane on that record.
They fucking got me.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen.
Pulled
Like
me
I
into
said,
their Christian bullshit.
I don't give a shit, because I was listening to Stryper and I was not like I guess I should, a little disclosure about me. Like, I went to Catholic school for years.
Mm-hmm. So did I.
I was a fucking altar boy.
I was not that.
I knew all about that shit, and then at some point I started to look into things a little deeper, and at some point, like, now I couldn't even tell you exactly when it happened, but it was just a progression over time that I became less and less religious and slowly started to become more and more hardcore atheist. And I couldn't tell you exactly. It's not like there's a date when I transitioned from,
Transition.
well, not that type of transition, but it's not like there's a date that it changed. Like, it just happened over time, but over the years, I became more and more hardcore atheist, and like now I'm about as hardcore atheist as you could possibly get. But it's not for lack of knowing, because I used to go to church all the time and was an altar boy, like I said, and was fully engrossed in that life for years. When I was in school for it.
Right.
And then eventually I got past it, but it's interesting. It gives me an interesting perspective on things too, because then when I have conversations with people about that type of stuff, I've had people that kind of approach it like they think I don't know anything about it, and I shut that shit down with a quickness.
Shut it down.
Because I'm very familiar with a lot of that stuff. A lot of things when it comes to religion, and I don't just talk about it from like a hater perspective. Like, I talk about it as I understand a lot of it. I was brought up in it. I know a lot of it, and I just think it's a bunch of crap.
It's a bunch of horseshit.
Yeah. So, not to offend anybody, but I think it's a bunch of junk.
Look, I'm not trying to offend anybody either. I'm not a believer. I'll never be a believer. You can miss me with that bullshit. But if that's what you choose to do with your time and your energy, more power to you. Just don't push it on me, because I don't want it.
Do your
That's
thing.
it.
But
I'm not telling you shouldn't. I'm telling you I'm not.
Yeah, I don't push it on people, but I mean, I joke around a lot about Stryper and stuff like that, because I legit like Stryper's music, but
I honestly don't know if I've ever even listened to it, but if it's good music, I would be fine with it. Like, I'm not weird like that, so people call it, and it actually irritates me. And this is my side note of the week, or what grinds my gears of the week is people that say that something is a guilty pleasure. And for me, I feel no guilt if I enjoy it. If I enjoy it, it's just what I like. I have no guilt in it. I'm just gonna tell you straight out. Yes, I like New Edition. I don't give a fuck. I'm not guilty about it. I like it. Like, whatever. Get over yourself.
I'm with you 100% because to me, it's not a guilty pleasure. Like, I'm into it. I have no guilt. I don't care.
Right.
Like, okay, you don't like it, whatever. Like, I don't give a shit. If
you don't like Madonna, I love Madonna. No guilt in needed.
Yeah, like if you think it's weird that I like Stryper, I don't care.
Right.
But I like a lot of other shit. If you think Reb Beach from Winger is one of my favorite guitarists.
Okay.
And I always liked him, and Whitesnake is one of my favorite bands, and he started playing for Whitesnake, and I learned to appreciate him even more for that. One of my favorite guitarists, and that's how I feel.
Yeah, okay. How did Winger, like, how have they not gotten the reverse banhammer at this point for that song 17? Just for, not even just for being a bad song, but specifically the content. I don't care that it's weird. I don't care that it's almost 40 years old at this point. And I'm not trying to come down on them, but if anybody found that song, like truly found that song and listened to the fucking lyrics, it would be like, yo, yo, yo. But that, different time, different place.
You know what? I'm surprised that they still do it live.
Right.
But
it was their biggest hit.
And they get the love for it, so.
But they're also singing the people that were singing the song 40 years ago. They're not playing it to new kids. It's to all the old folks that are still coming to see them.
Yeah, that's where it gets weird with a lot of the stuff because you wonder, like, I see a lot of videos on YouTube of a lot of these older bands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because they get good crowds. Because I just
good
watched...
Music is good music, man.
Listen, this past weekend... I watched a bunch of videos today, actually. This past weekend was the M3 Festival.
Which one's that?
The M3 Festival happens every year, and it's mostly hair bands.
Okay.
Let me give you the lineup, because this just happened this weekend. Friday was Kix, Slaughter.
Ooh.
Heaven's Edge.
Fly to the Angels with Slaughter, baby.
Yeah. And the Iron Maidens, who, if you don't know, they're
I know the Iron Maidens.
Yeah, they're an all-female Iron Maiden cover band. Saturday was Queensryche, Accept, Winger, Steven Adler.
Okay.
Steelheart, Bullet Boys original lineup, Hurricane, Enough's Enough. And then Sunday was Night Ranger, Warrant, Great White, Lita Ford, L.A. Guns, Faster Pussycat, Pretty Boy Floyd, and Little Caesar.
Okay, let me break something down for you real quick. Number one, Lita Ford is still awesome, and number two, L.A. Guns was way better than Guns N' Roses, but they never got their due.
I was never a big L.A. Guns fan.
That's fine, but that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
But I'll say that of this lineup, there's a good portion of these bands that I do enjoy.
I only heard a few where I wouldn't sit through their set.
Yeah, I'd probably watch most of them, but Slaughter was okay. I've seen them live a few times. I saw them open for Kiss a couple of times.
Mm-hmm. They just have like 3 songs that I like. I don't really particularly like them as a band, but I do like the 3 songs that I like a lot.
Queensryche, I'm open about being a huge fan of.
Mm-hmm.
Even now with the newer stuff they're putting out, some people are like, "Oh, it's not Jeff Tate, it's not Queensryche." This dude sounds better than Jeff Tate. I've seen them live a couple of times with Todd LaTorre, who's the current singer. They sound fucking fantastic. The new stuff that they put out is really good too, because I think they've put out 3 records at this point with him.
Mm-hmm.
Except, honestly, I watched a couple of videos of the Accept set, and I forgot how much I used to like Accept.
You know what? I liked a couple songs from Accept a lot.
Yeah, when I was younger, like in high school, just out of high school, Accept was one of the early bands that I got into, like the Metal Heart record, and I forgot how much I liked some of their shit. And then I saw some of the live videos. I'm like, wow, I remember this song. I used to like this song.
So Slaughter, I really, now looking back, I bought both Stick It To You and The Wildlife, which was the second record.
Yeah,
The Wildlife I hated.
Yeah, Wildlife wasn't. Stick It To You had a couple of songs. The Wildlife was kind of eh.
Eye to Eye, Up All Night, and Fly to the Angels were my 3 songs on the first record. The rest of the record is completely forgettable for me. Like, you could put it on and I wouldn't even know it was the record.
I have to look. I think they had a couple of other songs that I thought were okay, but I wasn't a huge fan. But
I'm not saying I was a huge fan, but there was a couple songs.
Yeah, and they were pretty good live also. Because, like I said, I saw them open for Kiss twice on the same tour. I forget. I think Winger was on one of those shows also. So it was Kiss, Slaughter, and Winger. And I think the other one was Kiss, Slaughter. Winger. It was Kiss, Slaughter, and Little Caesar was the other one. But I wasn't a fan of Little Caesar. But Little Caesar is another one that appears on this M3.
Right.
But yeah, except I was a fan of Winger. I'm a fan of. A lot of people thought they were corny, but
I mean they were corny, whatever.
But they had some actual good songs, and they even had a couple of songs that were like hints of like more almost progressive rock kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody heard those songs. Everybody was just focused on like, the basic rock songs. Steven Adler performed. He's got a dude from a Guns N' Roses cover band singing for him right now. It wasn't very good, but whatever. Steelheart, I was never a fan of. Bullet Boys, the first Bullet Boys record, I actually really liked. And they're another one. I saw them open. It was actually Winger was on the bill. It was Cinderella headlining at the Nassau Coliseum. It was Cinderella, Bullet Boys, and Winger. And that was a pretty good show.
I'm going to say that I have seen very few hair metal or hair metal adjacent bands live. Like, I literally started going to shows really when it was like, I'm going to see either hardcore shows or larger, like, grunge-esque shows.
Right.
Like, I didn't start really going out on my own until 92-ish, 91, 92 time frame.
Right.
So I missed a lot, because by that time, all those other bands were starting to wane.
Well, I was just going to say that you and I are pretty close age-wise, but this is where the difference really shows, because I started going to arena shows. Like I said, the Monsters of Rock show was in 88.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going to arena shows after that. I went to a lot of arena shows.
Between 88 and 93, probably.
Well, 91 was my first hardcore show.
Okay.
But I was still going. I would go to hardcore shows, and I would sometimes go to arena shows also. But after I started going to hardcore shows, I started going less to arena shows and more not necessarily to hardcore shows. But I started going to those mid-sized venue shows like, say, Roseland.
Right.
Or back then you had the Academy in the city. So those small to mid-sized shows where you'd see like Pantera or Anthrax was playing like Roseland or something. So I went to a lot more of those type of shows.
Rest in peace to Roseland.
Yeah. I saw many shows at Roseland.
Roseland's been closed since, I think, 2014, so we're coming up on 10 years with no Roseland.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
I saw so many shows at Roseland.
I probably only saw 10 shows at Roseland, but you got to remember, I'm not coming from New Jersey to go to Roseland. Right. It's a pain in the ass, especially the part of New Jersey I live in, because I still got to traverse all of New Jersey and then get into the city and then catch a fucking subway or walk up.
Yeah, I know it was bad. But for me, it was just the subway straight in. So I went.
It was easy.
I'm not exaggerating when I probably tell you that I saw like 100 shows at Roseland.
I wouldn't doubt it. The last show I know I saw at Roseland was Suicide Machines with I don't remember who was the main thing, and then it was the Descendants headline.
Okay.
I think it was Suicide Machines H2O Descendants or something like that.
Okay.
And I was definitely not there for H2O. I'm going to put that out there right now. Not a fan at all.
Okay.
Like, hard pass. But huge fan of Descendants, huge fan of Suicide Machines, and I couldn't turn down the show when I got the tickets. Me and Tony Corrado went.
Okay.
We caught the train up, and I think that was 2013 sometime, and then they were closed within a year or two.
Yeah, that was definitely towards the end. I went to so many shows there. That was one of those places, like, I spent so much time there because in the 90s, well, I mean, we talk about when I started playing live. I started working at Tower Records, which I've mentioned a million times on this podcast, and that stretch of the 90s, especially the mid 90s, when I was working at Tower Records, I went to just about every goddamn live show that you could think of in New York City.
I wouldn't doubt that. I just looked it up. It was September 20 something to 2011. So that was the last time I was at Roseland before they closed.
But yeah, so I went to every, if it was like a hard rock metal show, chances were good that I went in the mid 90s, because I tried to go to every show because I was working at Tower. I would get the hookup for tickets because the label guys and like the distribution guys would be in a lot, and I was friends with a lot of them. Or I asked my boss, and if I couldn't get them that way, I was running the Ticketmaster machine, so I would just watch. If it was a sold out show, I'd sit there banging that machine all day until a ticket would magically appear, because they would unlock tickets at one point, and I'd grab it up. So I went to tons and tons and tons of live shows in that time frame. So Roseland was one of the biggest places. Like, I used to go to Roseland a lot, and I was always, like I said, from when I started going to concerts, I was hooked on live music. And then when I went to my first hardcore show in '91, I was hooked even more, because that was a whole different type of energy.
Right.
And then going to hardcore shows and going to metal shows all through the 90s, it was just insane how many shows I went to.
So me, Tony, my boy Dan, and probably 4 or 5 other friends all went to see Civ in 94 or 5, right when Set Your Goals came out.
Yeah.
Hoping that they were going to play Gorilla Biscuit songs.
Nope.
And we also were there because the Toadies were on the show.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have never listened to the Toadies, they had some riffs, bro.
Yeah, because I remember Possum Kingdom came out.
Yeah, Possum Kingdom.
And that
had some fucking riffs on it.
That had the huge push.
Yep. So it was Civ. It was Brutal, Juice, then Civ, and
Brutal
then
Juice. Oh my god.
And then the Toadies. The Toadies headlined. And I had a fucking great time at that show. But I would argue that while I had been to shows before that, that was the start of me going constantly. And that was probably like late 94, early 95. So I had already been to a couple shows, but I didn't really pick up.
Hit you the same way.
Well, you got to figure I didn't get my license until 94.
Okay.
So for me to get to things was me relying on friends, because my mom was not. I was not a hey mom drop me off at the show kid.
Yeah, see,
wasn't me.
That was the big difference because
you were in the city. You could take the fucking train.
Man. I was in the city. I could take the train and spin it in a different direction. That's how I ended up being friends with a lot of people that you might know from the hardcore scene. That's, well, put it this way. That's how I became friends with Martin from Billy Club. Mm-hmm. Because here I am, this kid going, sometimes I go by myself, sometimes I go with my brother, or like a couple of us, like I mentioned, some friends from college that I used to jam with, but we never actually played. We would go and take the train to a show, and on the train you see some kids with like a Pantera shirt or a White Zombie shirt or something. It's like, oh, hey, you're going to the show, huh? And then suddenly you got some new friends.
Yep.
And that turned into a posse of a good 10 to 15 of us from the Bronx, maybe even more, that would go down to shows at Roseland. And part of that posse was Martin from Billy Club. Also part of that posse was his best friend Barry, who was the bass player in Go to Mentis, who eventually became the singer in Go to Mentis after Martin left. And a couple of other guys from other Bronx bands, like Proof of Purchase and a few other bands. We all just became friends. And Chucky Brown, who takes a lot of videos that you see on YouTube now, he was part of that posse too.
Yeah, well,
and it was all just like you would see kids on the train wearing metal shirts and like, yo, you're going to the show? And then bang, we chilling.
Right.
And then bang, we're rolling at the show deep. And then like beef pops off and all of a sudden we're all together. So like dudes are getting stomped out.
Handling the business.
Yeah, dudes are stepping and getting stomped out because they don't realize how deep we're rolling.
See, for me, it was a different situation because I'm living in the Trenton area, and right when I'm like really digging into going to shows, I had been to City Gardens, but City Gardens is closing. They closed in '96, and right. They transferred into being a dance club, and then they've been closed for over 20 years, and now the fucking roof has collapsed on the building. But I'm in this weird spot where there really wasn't anything other than pop punk shows at firehouses in the general area. So if I wanted to go see a show, I had to either go to Philadelphia, go to New Brunswick, or get on the train and go to New York City.
Right.
Now, granted, the train was $12 round trip at the time. It was no big thing, and parking was $1 in Princeton. It wasn't that big a deal to come up to the city to catch a show. Whereas now it's like $40 for the train and $10 to park, and then all the cost of the show and whatever, and it cost me $100 to see a show in the city. Is just not as worth it as it was when I would come up to Coney Island, or I would come up to go to CB's or whatever. Right. And I didn't know a lot of you guys in New York City at the time, so I was the kid that would occasionally mosh, and otherwise I'd stand in the back because, as you know, in New York City, you don't want to play around if you don't know nobody.
Well, that's what I was getting at before, because there were, if you're chill, you chill, but there were plenty of dudes that would try to act stupid and end up getting handled.
If I was moshing in New York City, I was moshing with a smile, and I was respectful of knowing my place within the fact that many people didn't really know me.
Yeah,
I wasn't in there trying to cause trouble. I was just having fun.
Well,
and you could see it on my face that I wasn't like acting like an asshole.
And I'm also not even posing like me and my friends were like tough guys. But I'm talking about like there were dudes that if you're into hardcore, that you're familiar with, that are affiliated and have a lot of friends. And if you got out of line, those dudes would handle you.
Well, you would get put back in line.
You would get put in the hospital.
Well, I'm just being nice. Come on.
Yeah, but they weren't.
Come on, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble here.
Yeah, well, you just had to know your place in the grand scheme. But that was the way it was for a lot of us, because there were certain dudes you knew. If you were on the wrong side of those dudes, you were getting it. And it wasn't even there were dudes that would dance, and you knew that's the dude to stay away from, because that dude will wreck your shit.
The first time Rat Bones hit me, I was like, oh nope, yeah. This is a no.
Well, you got Rat Bones, but the one was Kevin Bulldoze.
No, if Kevin Bulldoze was dancing, I was not anywhere near the floor. No. That was a given, because I went to the Pipeline once, and I was like, I don't think I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. I
went to see 25 to Life, and it was at a time where him and Rick were not at odds.
Well,
and things were cool, and it was 25, E-Town, and somebody else at the Pipeline. It was like a wild ass show. I had just found out about E-Town, and I was like, I need to go see this show. And I go up there, and I'm like, whoa. It was like 96, 97. I was dating this girl named Lori, and she lived in basically Kearney, New Jersey. And it ain't far from the Pipeline.
Yeah.
And so I was up at her place, and she was like, I love 25 to Life. They're playing. Can we go? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, who's playing? She's like, E-Town, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yo, let's go. Let's go. And, like, we're standing, and I'm like, I think I might die in here right now.
Well, to have another one of these old man conversations, you kids that go to hardcore shows now, you don't realize how easy it is. Like, you think you're getting lumped up. Like,
dude, hardcore was at a low point, and then you were still getting lumped up.
Back in those days, you could go, and if you make the wrong move, you would get it bad.
That's where I met Fat Pat. That's where I met Fat Pat, was at the Pipeline. That was the first encounter. And then I continued to see Pat for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Because back in the day, Rick...
25 years ago.
Kevin Bulldoze, Fred from 25 to Life was another one.
Fred.
Kung Fu Fred.
He was always in work boots. And them motherfuckers hurt.
Yep. Kung Fu Fred. Toby, H2O.
Yep.
Everybody sees Toby now, like, all smiles. Like, Toby used to get down. And a lot of those dudes, like, you could not fuck around, because when it came to just being in the pit, like, those dudes were doing work.
Yep.
And Rat Bones was another one. And
I'm telling you, the one time that Pat kicked me in the middle of what was called the Last for the Love of show, which was not there's no such thing as a last show until all the members are dead.
Yeah.
He kicked me so hard, I think my soul left my whole body. I couldn't breathe for like a good 14 minutes straight. I missed most of the set just trying to figure out how to breathe.
Yeah.
And then he just comes walking by. He's like, "You're all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
But that's what used to happen with Kevin Bulldoze. Like, everybody got blessed. Everybody got blessed by him at some point. Like, that was like your initiation. Like, you weren't going to hardcore shows unless he cracked you at least once. But that's how it was. And listen, by that time, I started going in '91, and by then, from what I was told by people, things had calmed down a little bit, because there wasn't anybody rolling around with Madballs.
Right.
And if you don't know, I'm not talking about the band Madball.
No,
I'm talking about a Madball is like a dude's got a cue ball in a sock, and they're swinging on dudes at a hardcore show.
Yep.
And, like, even then it was wild, because I talked about it the first time. My first hardcore show was at L'Amour's, and I watched the dude get dragged, long-haired dude, get dragged by his hair to the bathroom, and watched the bouncers guard the bathroom while that dude got adjusted inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then watched the bouncers carry that dude's limp body out of the bathroom and out the front door.
See, my only experience with L'Amour's, I think I told this on a previous episode, or maybe it's on an episode that we never actually released, but one of my favorite, my real only experience at L'Amour's was going to see the record release for Candiria,
Yes.
300% Density, which had E-Town, Hatebreed, and somebody else on it. Oh, Indecision on it, or something like that.
I think we did talk about this recently.
I think we talked about this with Phil, actually, because Phil came out and did the part that he does on that record, and Jamie Hatebreed came out and did his part too.
We talked about it then, but I think we talked about it with somebody even more recently. I don't remember who.
That's possible.
But either way, we
fucking
discussed it.
So many people got murdered in that room that night, and bouncers were just like, whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why the place eventually closed, because the bouncers were just implicated in too much shit.
Just allowing all kinds of nonsense to happen.
Well, because a kid died in there, and that was really
the end of it.
Because somebody saw him fall and crack his head, and like brain coming out of his fucking nose.
That's no good.
People freaked out, and like it was all over the local news here. So that was kind of the end of that. And then they tried to revive it a few times, but it never
took off. Couldn't do it.
It never took off. Partly because they kept trying, and like the owners kept changing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because people would get wind and be like, "Oh, what happened?" You know, we heard that this was going on, so they couldn't get away from it. Basically, that's just how it was. But it was pretty nuts. But and then over the years, going back to my story, I just kept going to shows, and then I started playing. I mentioned that I had the rock band, and then I had my first hardcore band, which was a band called Antagonize. We only played 2 shows. Somebody actually posted the flyer recently because I think it was the anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And we only played 2 shows. One of them, I think, was actually the last hardcore show at Bond Street.
Okay.
And then that band kind of fizzled out, and I was just going to shows, and it was a couple of years later that I joined a band called Distance, which was a couple of guys from Jersey and a dude that worked with me at Tower Records, because he was like, "Yo, I got this hardcore band, we're looking for a bass player, are you interested?" And I'm like, "Let me hear it." And he gave me the tape, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested." And that dude happened to be Rafe, who played drums in Kill Your Idols and the Arsons, and now plays for Black Anvil. We were playing in Distance, and he started to fill in for Kill Your Idols, and then when Distance fell apart, he went full on with Kill Your Idols.
So was he in Kill Your Idols with Brian Meehan?
Probably. I'm not 100% sure, because
I can never remember what time frame Brian was in.
it's hard for me too, because I know over the years they changed, like the lineups for Kill Your Idols were in and out a bunch of times. So he might have been in there with Brian. I'm not sure, honestly, because you had because Rafe was in and out, and then you had Vinny Value playing for them. Mm-hmm. But they went through a bunch of other drummers also. So I don't know the time frame. They may have played together at different points. I'm really not sure.
Okay. Yeah, because as you know, the only band I'm currently in is with Brian Meehan. We're doing that band with Chris from Nora and Smooths and our boy Sean, and things are going pretty good. I got to finish these guitar tracks, and this brings me down to where I'm at right now with music, is that I find it very, very hard to get interested in doing anything musically. This coronavirus quarantine time off, basically, like Descent ended in January of 2020, right before COVID started, and I basically did not play guitar from then till now. sans a few appearances on either fill-in for a couple bands or the one show that Descent played a few months ago, and a couple practices. I don't play at all. I think I own 14 guitars and I play 0 of them because I don't care anymore. I feel like I struggle to find the motivation to pick up. So I have these 3 songs that I have to play on. Mm-hmm. So I need to send either DIs or reamp it and send Chris, played guitars on this stuff. And I've had it for 4 weeks now. And the deadline is like tomorrow. And I still don't even know what the fuck I'm going to play on it. And I haven't even attempted.
It's so weird because I had the opposite. Like, I'm itching to play more. Like, and I'm not talking about play at home. Like, I want to get out. I want to jam with people. I want to play, and like, I'd love to play shows, but even just, I'd love to just go in the studio and jam with some people and fuck around. Billy Club is trying to write and do stuff, but like, I'm also down to get out of that bubble because I obviously enjoy doing Billy Club, but I also want to get out of that bubble a little bit and like maybe mess around with, like, I've talked to somebody about possibly working on some like covers project, just like a studio thing. And I'm down, like, I got the itch, like, I just want to play and do shit. So it's weird because you're in the total opposite direction. Totally
opposite. So like, this is inside baseball, and it's really only been talked about with the members of previous members of the band. But Bottom Feeder has talked about doing a new record. So it would be me and Pat and Ren and Gretsch. And then we still need a drummer, and that's kind of the hinge point. And Pat, he sends me messages. He's like, yo, bro, when do you want to get together and write? And I'm just like, as much as I want to do it, nothing gives me more anxiety than having to think about physically playing the guitar with any precision, because I'm so far out of it, because I have spent almost no time playing. Like, I used to sit and like at least strum or pick the guitar for like the first 5 months of quarantine, and I was like teaching myself how to sweep pick. I legitimately, outside of practicing for that Descent set, had not touched the guitar for 4 months prior to that. And it's literally sitting right over to my left. I can see it from here. You might even be able to see it in the picture.
Not quite, but I'm sure it's right off camera. Yep, it's just off camera.
Just off camera. And it's right over there. And all I would have to do is roll my chair back, reach out, and grab it. And I have no fucking interest.
Wow. Do you think that's a temporary thing, or you think
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't even know. Like, it's one of those things where I've just reached a point where I know that I started to kind of hate playing shows. I started to hate it. Now, what I don't know is whether it was situational and I was over the situation I was in, or if I was really actually over it. And the only thing that will tell is if I start doing it again and I still hate it.
And by the way, what's weird is that I won't disclose, I won't blow up their spot, but I know other people who are in bands that play regularly, although they haven't started again since COVID. But I know people who are in bands that have that same feeling. Like, they feel like they don't even know if they want to, like, they're not excited about playing shows once they come back from COVID. And they're not sure if they even want to do that.
I mean, full disclosure, I played a show in May.
Right.
It was an outdoor show, and I went. I had a perfectly fine time, and I played fairly well for somebody that doesn't play at all. Part of the issue is I have now a carpal tunnel situation going on in my picking hand.
Yeah.
So if I don't stretch, but literally I could be getting out of bed in the morning and have it lock up on me. It's not even like literally just sitting up out of bed and put my hand on this edge of the bed and my hand locks up, and I got 45 minutes until I can do anything. So part of me has anxiety about going to play a show and my hand locks up.
Right.
And then what? I can't fucking play like that.
Yeah, that I can understand completely.
There's just like a series of things, and I'm not physically in the shape that I was in when I was still playing, and like just so much around it has changed. And my time away in the last 18 months from it being the primary focus of my like fun time to being on no focus has been one of the toughest things for me to like get around. And then on top of it, writing. Like I've written parts. So for Descent, they had a 4-song demo before I joined the band, and then when I joined the band, we put out pretty quickly a split with Iron Price, and I was heavily involved in the writing of that split. And we actually left one song on the table, which eventually ended up on another release later. But in the interim, there was strife in the band, and I actually pulled myself out of writing. So I haven't physically written anything like in full since 2015. So it's been 6 years since I flexed the write something muscle. Because anytime I would write something for Descent, it would get shut down for being either too intricate or too mid-paced, or like something like it just didn't fit the band the way that the rest of the band saw it. I thought it fit fine, but other members who eventually not even being members anymore shot it down, and we already had gotten rid of it, and we never went back to reprise it. So our drummer was actually writing a lot of the stuff towards the end, and then I was just embellishing on it, like making it tighter, better, more interesting, but I wasn't physically writing anything. So now when people come to me and they're like, we want you to write stuff, and I'm like, I don't even fucking know how to write anything anymore, man. I don't know anything. All I know is play riff. I play riff. I play it good. I play it fine. I play riff. Not I'm gonna write it and like be really good. I'm like literally the caveman of the band. You tell me what to do, I light the fucking fire.
Yeah, I'll say this without revealing too much. I find that writing is the most tedious part of the whole process. Like I have a lot of trouble with it, but I think it's partly because writing doesn't come naturally to me. I have written a decent amount of stuff over the years, but I'm not the type of person that I can sit down and say, okay, I'm going to sit down right now and come up with a part or write a song. Like it doesn't work that way.
See, what happens with me is I prefer to be in a room with other people. Yeah, exactly. Even if they're not banging on anything, but just me playing a bunch of riffs in a row, and you tell me which one's cool, and then I expand on that cool riff only. Like, so what happens, especially when we were doing Breath of Silence and I was writing, I always have a habit of writing in a major key. So I write the song in the major key, and then we talk about it, and then we move the end pieces to be minor key, so that it's evil instead of happy. So like everybody be like, "Yo, riff is cool, but it's too happy. Make it evil." And then I just change one note along the way, and then it's evil. That's just how I write.
That's just how. Yeah. I come up with like I said, I can't sit down and just say, okay, I'm going to write a song now. Parts will come to me at random times in my head. While you're
sitting on the shitter, it just comes in.
And it's just weird. Like, I've practiced, and in the middle of practice, I'm like, whoa, stop for a second. Can you hand me that guitar? And then, because something just popped into my head in the middle of practice. Mm-hmm. In the middle of a completely different song, something popped into my brain. Which is, it's so weird, but
that's just how it works.
That's how it is. And it's frustrating. I find the whole process to be very frustrating. But it's rewarding at times. I think it's just frustrating because, like I said, it's not natural to me. I have a lot of trouble with it, and the new thing right now is that I'm kind of involved in some of the lyric stuff, which is a departure for me. I don't know how that's going to go, but I've been talking about ideas and trying to do, trying to throw out ideas to try and just do some things in some different directions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that's all going to work, but I think part of it is also just trying to flex a new muscle. It's something I never did, so let me try it. And if I can't do it, I can't do it.
So the thing that's been coming up lately is that Mo, former guest of the show, and former guest of the show, Matt Bennett, have keep talking about doing like a 90s rock.
Oh yeah, I've seen some talk about that.
And the big key is getting all three of us in a room. I don't know if you're interested, but if you want to play bass, we're going to need a bass.
Name me a couple of bands.
Well, the one that we really talk about the most is this band called The Posies that I've been obsessed with.
Okay.
But it's specific to this one record. But I've found myself going back and listening to the whole catalog, and it's actually pretty good.
Right.
But it could be literally...
Full disclosure, I'm not familiar with them.
That's fine. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it's purely rock-based stuff. Like,
right.
Not helmety, like, heavy, like, rock and roll. 100%.
Right. Yeah, and
it's a muscle I have never even attempted to flex.
I don't know. I'm
just a listener.
But then, let me say this, as a matter of public disclosure, like, my band Distance was very influenced by bands like Dag Nasty and more melodic stuff like that. And that was something that I never listened to before I joined that band.
Okay.
And people thought it was weird because some of my bass lines and stuff were very much in that style. And honestly, the only thing I could point to as an influence on that, as silly as this might sound, is the song Stand For by Leeway.
Okay. Hey. It doesn't matter where you find the influence as long as it works.
Because I was never much like I listened to more of it after, those guys kind of exposed me to it a bit. But I wasn't into like Dag Nasty and stuff like that. Even like we covered Minor Threat, but I was never that big into Minor because I was a metal guy.
Right.
So Minor Threat, I was like, there are, like it's okay, but like I'm not, like, I was listening to fucking Slayer, but I don't know. I mean, it's something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a muscle. As I said, I've never flexed before, so I don't even know how it's gonna go. I could sit down and go to attempt to write this stuff, and we could end up in a completely different location.
Right.
Like, so we started to do the band, me and Pat started to do the band Die Hard, and the intention was to sound like Count Me Out, which is like a pretty punk-ish hardcore band. Like,
right.
I mean, it's heavy, but it's not like mosh heavy. It's just like heavy on the riff, and we ended up basically laying the blueprint for like the re-emergence of thrash crossover in hardcore, because when we dropped that in like the same time frame that Lowest of the Low came out.
Okay.
Like, it was literally that same time, and you can hear thrash crossover in the severity of the Terror release. Like, it's not specific or exact, but we were both doing basically the same thing at the exact same time, but we did not even set out to sound like that. We set out to sound like just a fast hardcore band.
Well, I'll tell you two things. First of all, and it relates to this conversation, one of the things that I found at my age and with my experience is that I want to do new things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that maybe I haven't done enough of, or I haven't done at all, that I'm down to try, like talking about this lyric thing. Never done it, never tried it. Give it a shot, because it's trying to do something different.
Right.
So this kind of relates to that too. But also, just like you're saying, what a lot of people don't realize about being in a band is that it's all chemistry.
And
so you might go in with one idea and it goes in a completely different direction.
Yep. Or just, if it works, it works. Like, you know, sometimes I get in rooms. I've been in rooms with people where I knew immediately from the first riff, I was like, yo, this ain't gonna work.
Right.
Like, literally, you rip that first note and you're like, fuck, this is not gonna work at all. Unleash the Beast.
Oh my God. I was sitting here for a while, and then all of a sudden it's starting to sneak up on me. I'm like, yeah, gotta go.
If I don't piss now, I'm going to piss my pants.
Eyes are turning yellow.
Yo, we tell that to London all the time. I'm like, yo, because he'll be like, I don't have to pee. I'm like, London, your eyes are turning yellow. I can see them. I can see it. And he's like, what? No. And he'll run out of the room and go to the bathroom. Like, because he's just. Anyway. What was I saying?
You were starting to say something. You were talking about chemistry.
Oh, how basically, like, you know, you ring into that riff and the drummer is just, the drummer isn't working, or, you know, the bass player is just not going to be able to keep up with what you're doing. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I got this band that's coming in. We just did some pre-production last week, and their drummer actually tried out for Descent before Mike Polaro drummed for us. Okay. So we were looking for a new drummer because Dalton had quit, and this kid came in and he didn't prepare for. I mean, we were a pretty well-oiled machine at that time. Right. We were playing all the time, and had a good chemistry between the three instruments. And this kid shows up and he forgets like his kick drum pedals and some sticks, and like we're scrounging around the studio that we practice at, and then he's uncomfortable. But then on top of that, he had never even tried to play the songs before he got there, and he's just like, show me part one, and I'm like, this ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. And not because he's not like a reasonable drummer, but I don't have the fucking will to, if you don't take the audition seriously enough to at least prepare half a song or one whole song of the four so that we can get a feel for it, then I don't want to do it. So basically 20 minutes into this kid being there, I'm like, I'm going home. I'm done. I'm out of here. I gotta go. I'm not wasting my time with this bullshit for the rest of the night. So he came back and he's actually going to record with me with his current band. And like they laid down 5 songs or something like that, just rough, like live. Right. So I can tempo map. And he's a great drummer. Like he's a nice kid and he's a good drummer. Like it had nothing to do with him personally, but I knew at that moment that it was not going to work. No. And it's all, like I said, it's chemistry. Yep. And it's one of those things, like sometimes you just know. Sometimes you know. And it's not going to work. And that's also a work ethic thing because, listen, I've tried out for plenty of bands over the years,
and I've always been prepared. I didn't always get the gig.
You're not always going to get it.
I've always been prepared. Sometimes the chemistry isn't quite the same, and that's fine, but like it's never been because I showed up and
was unprepared
and was off, because I have always been serious about that stuff.
So the last two of the last three bands that I've joined, I joined after recording them. So I joined Bottom Feeder after I recorded them.
Right.
So they did a demo with me, and then they were like, yo, we need a second guitar player. Do you want to do it? I was like, fine, fuck it, let's do it. And that was when I was playing in Hammerhead at the time. So I was doing Hammerhead and Bottom Feeder at the exact same time. And I would argue that those are two of the better bands that have come out of the area in that time frame that didn't necessarily get the love that it deserved. But anyway, whatever. Besides the point, then I did the Descent demo, and their second guitar player quit. And they were like, well, let's ask Glenn if he'll do it, because he seemed to like it when he was recording it. And I was like, well, Bottom Feeder's broken up, so I'll do it. So literally I quit, like Bottom Feeder quit as a thing in November, and in December I was in Descent. So I literally jumped from one to the other, and I haven't had to like do the thing. And now I got to do the thing. And it's with everything else going on in my life currently, it's hard to get up for it.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, I'm just having a hard time getting motivated again. It'll probably happen. Like, I'm seeing all these shows, and I need to disclose. I mean, I am playing bass for one-on-one, but this is also another situation where they were recording with me, and they're like, we need a bass player, do you want to do it? And I'm like, sure, I'll play bass for you, whatever. The songs are fun, and I like you guys as people. Like, you're funny, and it's fun to hang out with you. Let's do it.
Right.
But again, it's not really my band. I'm not writing anything. I'm literally just slapping a bass.
Yeah, see, right now, just fucking around, like I said, like I've talked to some people about like doing recording type situations, and that's cool. I'm not in a rush to go out and play live with a lot of bands, but that's also because Billy Club is always my number one.
Right.
And I'm not like, I'll go play live with them and put the practice in, but like, I don't have the time to go traveling around all over the place and practicing with other bands and stuff, especially because it's so hard to find places to practice now in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And also, not to get too deep into it, but my work situation is kind of all over the place right now. I'm working in a couple of different boroughs from week to week. So I'm all over the place. I don't know where I'm going to be on any given day. So I'm not really crazy about having to commit myself to, say, go to Queens to rehearse on a Tuesday when I might end up working in Brooklyn that day, you know?
Right.
But when it comes to like recording projects and stuff like that, that's more up my alley right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to race around and play shows with like 3 different bands. There was a time in my life when I did that. I used to fill in for different bands and shit, and I love doing it. But right now, I'm not really crazy about doing it. If the right thing came along and it was worth the time and effort, then maybe. But like, again, Billy Club's my primary, and unless Billy Club is done, which isn't happening anytime soon, I'm not in a rush to really make other commitments when it comes to live shit.
Right.
But if you got a recording project and you want somebody to play bass or guitar, I'm open.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this thing that me, Matt, and Mo are talking about would certainly never be some kind of high-end commitment.
Yeah.
Mo is playing in a number of things, including all the current Shia Lude stuff that's booked for going down to that Furnace Fest, and then Iron Price is about to be back on the road as soon as they get like to whatever point it is that their shows kick in. They're going to be out playing, so none of that stuff is going to be high touch. I would assume that we would get together 2 or 3 times and literally have a demo done by the end of that 2 or 3 times, short of a singer. But like the music would be written in 2 or 3 bursts of like being in a room together. And then even if Mo recorded his drums elsewhere because he's got his own little studio set up, and then sent it to me and Matt to put like guitars on it, we could come up with the context of what we were going to do, tempo it out, and he could play it whenever he wanted to. It was like there's options. So I don't know, it's something that we're thinking about, and you know, if you want to come hang out, come hang out, and if you don't want to come hang out, don't come hang out.
What I would love to do one day, and this is me just speaking like a crazy person, I would love to take a handful of people that would make up a full band of like friends, and lock ourselves in a studio for a weekend and try to come up with like a couple of songs and just record them
on the spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be down for that.
I would love to do some shit like that, just because it would be weird,
low touch.
If we got real crazy, we'd have Sonny fucking film some of it. and just make some weird shit out of it, you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't care. Like, I'm down to do, if there's stuff that I've never done, like musically, like I'm down to at least try it at this point. Like, and this is the theme of what we've been talking about this whole episode. We've been playing for so long. I've been playing for so long. Because like I said, I picked up a guitar in the 80s at this point. So I've been playing for 30 fucking years. 35 years at this point. And if there's something that I haven't done musically that seems kind of interesting, I'll probably try it. Just to get out of whether like I mentioned, trying to get involved in the lyric stuff, but other music stuff, I'm down to try different shit, because it's like I've made it this far. If it's something I haven't done yet that I'm thinking about doing, why not do it? What the hell?
Yeah, try it out.
You know,
worst that happens is just
probably discover some shit that I like. I'll probably discover some shit that I don't like, or whatever. Check it off the list. You know?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, it's an interesting place that we ended up.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense because we're talking about where we've been, what we've done, and I guess in a way, it ends up with what we are gonna do.
What we may end up doing.
So, yeah, I think that's a perfect ending. So, hit us up.
We could do this journey again and have a completely different conversation. So, don't think that this is the last time you're going to hear this.
Oh, sure. And I mean, listen, we didn't even really talk about our band history much. Like,
but we've detailed band history like a bunch of times.
We've talked about it a lot, yeah.
If you haven't put it all together, you know, like everybody that's typically listening to us knows what the fuck we've done.
I mean, listen, honestly, we've probably done it and then forgotten shit. So who knows? Because I filled in for plenty of bands, and like I've probably forgotten them, some of them at this point.
Well, today was probably the first time I ever mentioned "Come Out Swinging."
There you go.
But I mean, it's key and tantamount to like where I'm at right now. So that's it. Just kind of what came out, but you know. And I was looking while we were on this call. I can't seem to find the release online. I'm gonna have to hit Brad up and see if he's got it up somewhere that I just can't find it.
Yeah.
But I'll let you know.
I'm so old that I've forgotten more stuff than you even know.
I'm so old that some of the bands that I played in aren't on the internet because the internet didn't exist in the way that it exists now. That's where I'm at. Like, I'm pre fucking MySpace, because like there are bands that like we were MySpace band. Like, you know, we had our music all over MySpace and no, I've been playing in bands since the late '90s, early 2000s, and it was before the internet was even real.
Oh yeah. Well, listen.
You know. I don't have to fucking tell you.
If not for my good friend Glenn Lorio, there would probably not be a trace of Distance on the internet. But because of him, and he recorded, you know, he used to work at the WNYU, which was NYU's radio station, and he had a lot of bands come through there and play, and he had Distance come and play, and he recorded all of them, and he started putting them up on YouTube. So Distance Live is actually up on YouTube.
Okay.
And that's the I have the other demos and stuff, and I need to put them up. I just never have. I just need to make sure that everybody in the band is okay with it, I guess. But none of that stuff is up online as far as I know. Only that WNYU thing.
Right. So, and if it wasn't for Glenn having that recording, I wouldn't even have that. There's no photos. There's literally 2 photos of the band that one of my friends took that I wasn't even friends with back then. He happened to be at the show, and I became friends with him years later. And he posted those 2 pictures, and I was like, holy shit, how do you even have these? But there's no pictures, there's no videos, nothing. Yeah, there's nothing online from my first band, my actual first band. Yeah. Nothing out there at all.
Didn't happen.
Pretty much.
If there's no footage online, if it's not on YouTube, it did not happen. Where was Sonny Singh back then? God damn it!
Too young. That's where he was.
We needed you.
I love that guy.
He's great, and he's back in the swing of things now.
Oh yeah.
I didn't get a chance to talk to him at the Madball show, but he was there.
Oh yeah.
And
he just did that Year of the Knife show on Saturday.
Yep.
And he's just going to be ramping it up. And, like, he made I helped him, but he did it himself. Made the Corona quarantine work to save himself by either working on stuff in the backlog or shooting live sets from Landmine or various other places to make sure that his Patreon subscribers still felt comfortable with giving him money, because it's a donation site to help people do the things that you want to see later. Right. So, you know, he played his cards the right way and made it work, and now he's coming out the other side. And for me, in my opinion, it's only going to look up from here for him.
Oh, like, sure.
He did the hard work. He took the hits and the bumps where he had to, and now he's back in the saddle, and he's going to be all over the fucking country, you know, recording shit and putting shit up on the internet. And there's only one, I talked to him about it, there's only one other person with an archive as deep as his, and it's one guy from Europe who has about 6,000 videos online.
Wow.
Sonny's number 2 at like 4,300 videos, and I feel like his number is going to climb fast.
Oh, sure.
The key, though, is that almost all of Sonny's archive is either old archive footage that he's restored that was never on the internet, or he shot it himself.
Right.
Whereas this other guy, his stuff, he's got a team of people that go out and record shows. It's not just him cultivating a thing. It's like a whole group of people cultivating a thing, and that makes it different.
Yeah.
Because like when you watch, for the most part, a Sonny video, what you're seeing is what he thinks you should see.
Right.
Like, while he's in the moment, he's got his head on a swivel, and he's using that camera to capture what his eyes tell him to capture.
We got to get him back on so I can ask him if he ever sleeps.
I don't think he does.
I don't think he does either.
I'm sure he would come back on. I'll ask him one day.
Yeah. Sonny, do you sleep?
No rush. Sonny, have you ever slept more than 1 hour at a time?
No.
Well, like the other day, he's like, in the last 24 hours, I've done X, Y, Z. And I'm just
I saw that.
Bro,
like,
how did you do all that?
The last 24 hours,
He was
ate
in
a pizza
Boston.
and scratched my ass.
Yeah. He's like, I was in Boston, I filmed Bane and blah, 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 these sets, and then I did a live stream from Mamiya, and then I'm headed off to do this, and I'm going to do that. And, like, I'm like, dude, I thought I was busy. I took the weekend off. I didn't, since Sunday night, since Friday night, I didn't do shit studio-wise for a whole 48 hours. I just stopped because I had been on for, I think I was at 3 months where I did something studio-related every day.
I was going to say, when was the last time you did that?
3 months at least.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include being a dad and going to my 9-to-5 job and then taking care of my dad and like all the everything else. Everything else, I still found the time every day for like 3 months to work on something for the studio, and I'm still backed up. Like as a one-man operation, I can't keep up with all the people that want me to do something for them, and I still needed to take 2 days off because my brain, just trying to tell you, I couldn't even figure out what day it was. So because my brain is just fucking fried. I'll be back on it tomorrow. So if anybody's waiting for something from me, you're listening to me. This is Monday, July 5th, or now it's Tuesday, July 6th.
Technically Tuesday, July 6th now.
As we record this, and I will be today, Tuesday, July 6th, back on the fucking horse, editing more nonsense and getting it out the door. So if you're waiting for something from me, hopefully you'll get it this week. If not, kiss my ass.
I think it's a perfect way to end this episode.
Hey, it's always good to talk to you, Gary.
This is always enjoyable. By the way, just to point this out, I should have pointed this out at the beginning because we talked about this last week. We have officially reached over a year of the upgrade.
Yes, we have. So. And not to drag this out, but that post where we were talking about doing it was legitimately 5 years to the day from the time that we put that the first episode up, which it blew my mind that the time frame coincided so tight and we didn't even know.
I can't believe it was I knew we talked about it for a while, but I can't believe it was 5 fucking years. Yeah. We're some lazy motherfuckers.
Busy.
After all this talk about how you haven't taken 48 hours in forever, I'm like, yeah, we're fucking lazy. It took us 5 years to do this thing.
I'm glad that we decided to do the thing.
Oh yeah, because I mean, without a doubt,
like instead of me going to a therapist, this is my therapy.
Yeah,
I talk to you about
it's
whatever.
Funny because I know I think I mentioned this to you before. We really enjoy this stuff, and we know other people who are podcasters who feel the same way. Because talking to Joe Hardcore, he's like, dude, if I never had to book a show again, I just love doing fucking podcasts. And I'm just like, yeah, it's fucking fun, isn't it? And yeah, our first episode went live June 24th, 2020. And that post where we originally talked about doing a podcast was
June 23rd, 2015.
Yeah, so
it was legit.
Yeah, we were
like within a day.
Yeah, just barely off.
And we could have gone live. We had it already locked and loaded. We could have gone live on the right day.
Yeah. Yeah, we just took our time.
Well, we just didn't even know.
We wanted to get everything right, but once we got it right, because we wanted to get the logos and all the other shit, but then we got it all, and it all worked out. So here we are. Well, this will be episode, what,
62, 63? Because we've done a couple episodes and a couple extra episodes.
This will be 62.
And John Wren is the most visited on the show, followed by Andy.
Isn't that unfortunate?
Yeah, it is. Fuck both of them.
John Wren. I'm sure he popped huge for the fucking masks in the goddamn Halloween trailer.
Oh, no, he definitely did. He definitely did. I saw it on someone else's post.
Yeah, I know.
I was like,
fuck you.
I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, the fucking masks. Come on.
I had the exact same reaction. I was like, oh, god damn it.
But I do kind of like that they're tying in some lore from earlier films to really tie this up here. Because this one and the next one are supposed to be literally the last ones. So I don't care what shit they throw out at me at this point. Bring back the girl from 4 and 5, Jamie. Bring her back. Like, bring everybody back. Bring the whole bring Paul Rudd back. I don't give a fuck. Resurrect them all.
Yeah, I'm just mad that John Wren got that fucking pleasure out of that.
He had maximum pleasure.
Oh yeah, he was like, yeah, look, you motherfuckers, you fucking small dick motherfuckers.
He fucking tagged us.
A jerk.
Did you miss the tag he tagged?
No, I know.
Oh, okay.
I just angry.
Dickhead.
Angry.
I hope you hear this, John Wren. You're a dickhead.
God damn it.
Anyway,
The
what more can I say?
TheUpgradePodcast.net for all of your small dick needs. Thanks for that, John Wren. You fuck you. You motherfucker, you. And that's it. We'll see you guys again next week. And by the way, thank you to Cody Clark for that recommendation of Scumbag comic book, because it's really fucking good.
Cody Clark is a good dude. I like Cody Clark.
Certainly. Got to see him at the Madball show too. So anyway, thanks for listening, guys. We will see you again next week. Peace.
Later.